welcome back to pixelprojectradio. My name is Rick Firestone. This is part 2 of our NieR Replicant coverage. And I'm joined once again, thankfully, by the impeccable Dave Jackson from Tales from the Backlog. Dave, how's it going, man?
Going good, dude. Thanks for having me back on for part 2.
Of course, mandatory. Second playthrough. This is our playthrough B. We're going to get the good ending this time.
And then we're going to come back for playthrough C, D, and E in the future, right?
That's correct. The future and sadness. Speaking of endings, if you are a new listener, first of all, welcome. This is one of the only times I might suggest you check out a previous episode before listening to this one. This is our second part of NieR Replicant's coverage. And I was told once some really great advice for essay writing. You know, when you're writing an essay, giving an essay, speaking an essay, you've got to tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them what you told them. So let me tell you what we're going to tell you. We're going to go all the way through. We ended last time right at the halfway point, roughly at the halfway point. We're going to go all the way through ending A, talking about the plot beats. Endings B through D are really important, but they have less new stuff in the story. So those will be more of an abridged discussion. Then we'll get to ending E. That'll be a bit of both, a little from column A, a little from column B. And we're going to get through the whole thing today, talking about how we feel about it. So if you're a new listener again, welcome. We're glad you're here. Maybe listen to episode 1 first. And if you're a returning listener, well, you know the deal. So Dave, last time, where did we leave off last time?
Didn't we left off with that fight in the library where Kaine gets petrified, right? And like right before the time skip.
That's right. So the time skip, we are now, 5 years in the future?
Yep, 5 years.
Yeah, we're 5 years in the future. Our protagonist, NieR, now has the amazing ability to wield spears and heavy swords.
He's not a little anime teen anymore. He's a full-grown anime man. So he can wield manly weapons like spears and great swords and stuff like that.
He is a big anime man. If you're playing the original NieR Gestalt, he kind of looks like the same age. He just has a sort of diaper on his head because he apparently lost one of his eyes.
Oh, that's how they show character development in adults after a time skip, is they wear a diaper on their head.
Yeah, the obligatory eye removal. Happens all the time. Eye patches.
I can't wait till it happens to me.
I can't wait to be a pirate. But we come back. We are taking care of shades in the village. Shades are still running rampant. One thing about the time skip that's important to note is our main character, NieR, he is not quite as youthful in spirit anymore, and he's much more cynical and jaded. His whole reason for existence, I don't remember that French phrase for that, but his whole reason for existence is basically killing shades. That's all he cares about at this point. And finding Yona.
You definitely get the feeling that we skipped ahead 5 years. We know exactly how he spent the last 5 years, just killing shades.
Yes, sir. Last 5 years. Good musical. Anyway, I've got musicals on the brain, man. For the past week, I've just been hammering them. But anyway, this is not my musical podcast, Stage Rick instead of Stage Right. Do you get it? We're workshopping here. For now, we are NieR is going to Popola. Popola is sort of our home base, if you'll remember from episode 1. One thing that's a little bit of foreshadowing that's kind of disguised as just little flirty behavior is NieR comments that Popola looks identical to when we last saw her 5 years ago, even though she says, well, you've grown up so much, but she hasn't. She looks exactly the same.
It's a little cheeky, you haven't aged a day, like that.
That's one thing as I was putting together these notes, and we'll talk about this more as we get through the next endings, but the writing here, yes, the writing is good, especially in the text adventure sections, but the writing, they're really good at throwing in these little 1 or 2 liners that are perfectly recontextualize on subsequent playthroughs. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
But anywho's, when we visit Popola, we have a letter. We get a letter from our good friend Emil. Emil found some evidence that there is an archival room somewhere in the mansion, specifically created as a long-term storage solution for number 6, as well as other things. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but we are going to Emil. He says he's found something. When we get there, that's when he shows us the information about the archival room. Sorry, shaking off the cobwebs here, everybody.
And he thinks that, because we left off last time, Kaine was petrified. One of our key party members was petrified, Han Solo style, and Emil thinks that he's got a way to unpetrify Kaine. So obviously we're going to take a break from killing shades. We're going to unpetrify Kaine while killing some shades.
Exactly so. We're going to unpetrify Kaine, we're going to cure Emil's eyesight, and all will be well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going down into this new area of the mansion. There's a hidden door in the courtyard, and when we go down, it's sort of this laboratory-esque series of hallways. And this is where the gameplay shifts to a top-down sort of isometric perspective. People have compared this to, what is it, Diablo?
Yeah, it kind of looks like a Diablo type thing. It's just, I mean, it's nothing else changes about it, just the camera. So it's just like every other time this game has changed the camera on you before.
Yeah, I've not played Diablo, so I'm not sure about those comparisons, but it is just a camera shift. The mode of play is the same. The only change is we can't let Emil get too far behind us, which is a little bit annoying because anytime he does get too far behind, you get halted and Vice tells you, hey, wait for Emil. Pretty annoying because Emil moves pretty slowly. But he's also our ace in the hole because remember, like we said last time, he can petrify enemies pretty instantly, and that's a one-hit KO.
This was back before game designers figured out to have your companions run at a similar speed to your character. It took way too long for this to get worked out.
I mean, have they figured it out?
I think so. I feel like I've played, like God of War games, you're constantly traveling with people. They travel the same speed as you, for example. I feel like I haven't played one with a companion or an escort or something that runs way too... No, that's not true. Breath of the Wild has that. Never mind. I'm wrong.
Oh yeah, that's still a rampant problem. It's the worst. While we're waiting for Emil and while we're traversing through this area, we're finding these documents. So one thing that I don't think we mentioned this last time, Dave, is the loading screens in this game generally are going to be diary entries from Yona.
Yep.
Right? And she's writing things like, oh, NieR sent me a letter today. I can't wait for him to come home. Or, oh, I baked this amazing thing today. I can't wait to try it with my brother. Things like that. But sometimes, and this is random as far as I can tell, you'll get these scientific journal pages that are notes. And at the beginning, we don't have any context, and we're gaining that now. So as we go through this underground facility, we are picking up these notes titled Plan Snow White. As we're going through, too, Emil is clearly in some kind of mental pain or mental distress as he's kind of remembering what transpires. He doesn't really remember his time from this place, but we're going to learn about that pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of remembering it, he does gain back all of these memories upon seeing the perfect weapon, number 6. So this is Emil's backstory is a doozy.
It is, and this is just the beginning of it. So it's here that you find out that weapon number 6 was his sister, or you had already heard that he had a sister or something like that, but they go much deeper than just telling you like this is Emil's sister that we're talking about. Later on, you get deep into how sad this actually was.
And it does get pretty sad. What we learn is that Emil and his sister, her name was Halua, they were just regular kids, but they got brought into this science facility for experimentation. The goal of all of this was to create the perfect weapon. And what they did to Emil was they mutilated his eyesight and kind of made him a failsafe for this weapon. They made Emil number 7, weapon number 7. His purpose is to petrify weapon number 6, which became his sister, if it ever got out of control.
Yeah.
And when we find it here, it is kind of, I think it's the coolest imagery in the game, really.
Which imagery in particular, the weapon, number 6?
Yeah. When we find it, it's sort of chained and almost impaled to the wall like it's crucified with chains and metals. And it's just a very cool image to see, too. And for those that have seen Yoko Taro, this is where his iconic mask comes from.
Right.
It's that same exact head. And it's on like a humanoid-esque body. It doesn't look quite right. Like the body is shaped kind of like a squash.
Oh, yeah. It looks like a monster, for sure.
Yeah. And that's Emil's sister.
Yeah.
And as far as we know, this is the first time he's seen her in years.
Yeah. And like living above in the mansion the whole time, I was not really quite sure whether Emil knew that this like lab and stuff was down here the whole time. Surely he knew, because we find out later that he's familiar with this place, but it seems like a surprise when we find it. So,
well, he did say that he couldn't remember up until this point.
Okay.
I just assumed that, it was blocked out due to trauma or something.
Yep. Fair enough. Yeah. So like we start into it, and it's like you said, it's like pinned up, chained up, impaled. You start to approach it, and it's alive, and you're like, this is shit. We have to fight the ultimate weapon now.
Yeah, and as it's sort of waking up, and as it's waking up and getting off from the wall, Emil is sort of speaking to us as he's approaching it. He's making us promise that if it swallows him up, that we kill him / the weapon. And pretty much as soon as he says this, he gets swallowed up. Like it's pretty immediate.
We have a boss fight here against the ultimate weapon, and I don't know about you, but this was like when this boss fight started. This was unlike the other ones. They're all shades of similar, strategy. This one's different. You're fighting, like they said, the ultimate weapon. So I was like, oh, this is a pretty serious one. And it's not, but it's just a little bit different. And there's a gameplay gimmick to it, I think.
Yeah, you can't use your physical weapons. You can only hurt it with magic. And the reason being is because, well, Emil's in there. We don't know where at inside he is. As far as we know, he's just like in the belly.
He's in there somewhere. It's Will Smith getting swallowed by the alien in Men in Black.
Yeah, exactly. And we got to get him out. It's not a difficult boss fight, but once we do take it down, they sort of have this moment where they fuse together, and we get a little dream sequence of Emil and Halua getting reunited for just a moment.
And so, like, when Emil comes back, he is not Emil as we knew him anymore, and so this was what I expected too, because I played Automata first. So this was what I had seen of Emil. You played them this one first and then Automata. So you got this like natural progression, but when Emil comes out, he is like the skeleton with the mask on and like a cool cape. Not the sweet little boy that we had been traveling with up until now.
And it's really sad, too, because he's gone through this entire journey. I mean, yes, to unpetrify Kaine, but ever since we met him, he's been extremely uncomfortable with his body because of his eyes. Mm-hmm. And now he's turned into effectively a monster.
Yeah.
And he breaks down. He starts losing it. He's sobbing, and, we're offering him comfort, and we're saying, it doesn't matter. You're still Emil. And he cheers up pretty quickly. I kind of wish that would have, lasted a little longer. It kind of does. He revisits these feelings later, but for the time being, he's chipper as can be pretty quickly.
Yeah. Back to being Emil. I guess NieR gives good pep talks.
One thing of note that I just thought was really funny is, in both versions, Gestalt and Replicant, what Emil says when he looks at you for the first time, because obviously he's seeing you for the first time.
Yeah.
He says, you look just like I imagined. You look so cool. And when you're playing as Papa NieR with that diaper on your head, I don't know, man. That's kind of funny.
You look just like I imagined. You look so cool.
Yes, Kaine, we are friends now. I don't know, man. It's so clear that this was not written for an adult to be playing this role. But now we can unpetrify Kaine. And we do pretty quickly and pretty easily, actually, with Emil's newfound powers. That's something that we're going to be seeing more of, is Emil has, he's absorbed his sister, and now he's got some more of her powers.
Mm-hmm.
When we unpetrify her, she basically says the same things to Emil that NieR does. She's just kind of happy to see him. Everybody's being really nice to this kid, and that's great. He deserves this, at least.
And now we're starting the section of the game that you are going to see a couple of times.
Yeah, this is where, so if you're not a fan of backtracking, this whole game might kind of rub you the wrong way. But this is where we start to revisit everything that we've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is we go back and visit Popola, because she's our home base. She believes that the lost shrine is connected to the Shadow Lord somehow. And now that the ferry pathway, the boat pathway is finished, we can take a boat there and check it out, because we couldn't go back before. Remember when we first went to the temple in the very beginning, the whole bridge got destroyed, so we haven't had a way to get back. Now we can.
Now we have a back entrance with the world's longest ladders going up the cliff face.
Yeah, it is a steep climb. Emil and Kaine's back and forths pick up, though. I mean, Vice and Kaine's back and forths have been going, Vice and NieR's have been going, but now Emil and Kaine's are going back and forth more often, and it's very sweet. They have a really nice relationship.
Yeah, they have the most supportive and just incredible friendship in this game. Just the two of them, they pick each other up, they support each other, they talk about like their dreams and stuff together. It's super cute.
They kind of tease each other a little bit at certain points, too. It's pretty funny. It's like one of the only times we see Kaine kind of let her hair down, so to speak.
Yeah.
But we're going back to where we found Grimoire Vice in the first place. And when we get there, it turns out one of those original bosses, the first bosses that we fought, those two twins that kind of look like potato heads, one of them is still alive. He's alive, and he's pissed.
Yeah.
And he does attack. This is pretty much just the exact same fight that we did before, right?
Yep. Except I think this is the first of many times that Kaine gets killed in an unfortunate accident.
It is really unfortunate because we're kind of the ones that cause it. The boss throws one of his axes at you, and we deflect it. But we deflect it right at Kaine, and the handle just pierces her in the chest.
Yeah.
So she's down, and we take care of the boss. No big deal. And it looks like Kaine is kind of beyond help, and she kind of has this moment. The scrawl starts to take her over. The shade takes her over, and she's like, "Hey, you got to get back." And then immediately, almost, she is now a shade, and we have to fight her. We're fighting Kaine again. This time as a shadow boss. She's
like Spider-Manning around the room and shit. It's a really different. I think it's like one of the first, besides the first time you fight Kaine, but she's just like a regular, person type enemy. She's like flying around the arena. She's jumping around. It's a really different kind of boss fight compared to the big enemies you're normally fighting.
Absolutely. And one of the first things that I thought of whenever I first fought this is like, well, this shade has been inside of Kaine all this time. We've known that from the beginning. How much of this power has she had, and how much can she access at will,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we ever get a concrete answer to that. But, well, I guess we kind of do in an oblique way, but we'll get there, I suppose.
Yeah. Yep. So this is one of my favorite parts after this. It's one of my favorite like dialogue scenes. So you beat her up, you win the fight, the shade kind of falls back into the background, and Kaine gives this speech. It's one of a couple times where one of your party members will say like, I don't want you guys to follow me anymore, or I don't want you to worry about me. I need to do this by myself, or you need to stay away from me. And every time they're always like, nope, you're part of the group, et cetera, et cetera. But I think this is the best one. So Kaine says like, I can't control this thing. I'm dangerous. But Emil cuts in and he gives this like impassioned speech about how Emil is only okay with who he is because of Kaine. Kaine is the one who like gives him the confidence to keep living and keep, be as accepting as he can of who he is, because Kaine is there and she's dealing with this too. And the voice acting is like really, really, really good. Did you play this in English or Japanese?
No, I played this in English.
Okay. Yeah. So I did too. The English voice acting for Emil here is great. Like really given 100%. This is one of my favorite scenes, and it really like hammers home the relationship between Kaine and Emil.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the voice acting is stupendous. From what I've heard in the Japanese version, it's just as good, but the English dub is stupendous as well.
Yeah.
And remember, like we said last time, one of Yoko Taro's ambitions going into this project was to make it not quite as dark as Drakengard and use this theme of friendship. One of the themes is friendship. And so we get a lot of these soliloquies as we go forward, usually from Emil, actually, but that's okay.
Emil's the best.
He's pretty great. Now that we've kind of taken care of Kaine and she's okay, we find this mysterious puzzle stone object. It's clearly a piece of something, so we take it back to Popola. And she says, I think this is a cipher, and I think this is how you're going to get into Shadow Lord's castle, which is a fascinating reach. I don't think we would have gotten there on our own. Just smart old Popola. She writes down the words that she can make out because it's written like in an ancient language. And what we realize is it's the first of 5 pieces to a larger sort of key. So we're now going to be revisiting each and every area that we've cleared already. I don't think there's a staunch order to this. Like, I think you can do this in kind of flexible order.
Well, I'm glad you asked because I did this several times. There are a couple of points where they ask you, where do you want to go first? Do you want to go to the junk heap or do you want to go to the forest? And if you go to the junk heap, you will do something like half of the quest, and then they'll say, all right, let's go to the forest while we wait. Then we go back to the forest to finish it up. And I assume it's similar if you choose to go to the forest first or something like that.
Yeah, there's some stuff built in, like with the junk heap, for example. There's a waiting period sort of built in. You can't complete it all in one go.
Yep.
So that's what that's there for. Let's take a stop at the Forest of Myth first.
Yeah.
So when we get there, the mayor tells us that he hasn't really noticed anything strange, but he has felt a weird presence over near this divine tree. It's this big tree in the middle of their village. We ask, did you investigate it? And they're like, well, no, we're not supposed to go near it. And when we ask them why, they're like, actually, I don't know. So that doesn't stop us. We go near it.
Yeah.
And this tree is able to talk to you. And this is a really fascinating part of the game.
Yeah. This is another text adventure section, just like the first time that we were. I think the first text adventure was the first time we were here, right? Or is this the first one?
No, we were here before.
Right. So, yeah. And again, really interesting writing. I really enjoyed reading these. This one was a little bit less fun than the one before, I think, because it's a puzzle where it's not really a puzzle, it's a quiz. And I had a really hard time figuring out what I needed to memorize, and they switch it up. So if you get the question wrong the first time, such as what color eyes were did the girl have, you'll be like, oh, it was green. And then you start over and you pick green. You skip through the dialogue, of course, because you've already read it. And then you get to the end, the answer is not green this time, it's a different color. So they randomize it, so you have to pay attention every time. There's 3 questions, and I ended up reading this about 5 times trying to beat it.
There's 3 questions for the 3 memories. It's not going to
Yeah.
be 3 per memory, which is nice. And another nice thing, too, is that it does randomize the answers, but it's always the same question.
Right.
So the first one, it's always the color of the eyes. The second one, it's always the number of comrades, etc. And each of these memories is themed after one word, and it's usually an emotion, like loss. I don't remember the first one. Envy is another one. So we're seeing this tree's memories. Essentially what's happening is this tree is gathering and storing memories from this village and from all over. We don't know why quite yet, but we learn that towards the end of, or towards the beginning of ending E, excuse me. But for some reason, it's been losing all of these memories. And nobody knows why, except for you right now, because what you learn is that a shade has somehow found itself inside of this tree, and it's eating the memories, which is really interesting. We don't get to see this. It's all the text adventure. But of course, NieR kills it because it's a shade. But what's super interesting about this is the shade is able to speak to NieR, and it asks him questions similar to what the tree was asking. And we can hear the shade's thoughts as well. Well, we can read the shade's thoughts. And it has this intense desire to touch NieR, to make contact with him. And when it does, the tree itself begins to feel what's described as the searing hot emotion, like the beginning of a development of a soul after centuries of just being a tree. And this is maybe the first, it's certainly not the first, but this is a huge hint that shades and NieR, shades and people, are connected in some way.
I didn't catch this my first time because I was very focused on if there were going to be more quiz questions.
That's fair. I think there is one in here, the color of envy, I
Yeah.
think is the question. But yeah, it's so fascinating because we're left with so many questions, and Yoko Taro intentionally does this thing where he will hide bits of lore in other publications, in short stories, in other games, and etc. So a lot of this we actually don't get directly in the game. It doesn't necessarily hinder the story experience, but we could talk about that more whenever we get towards the end, where all of this starts to come together.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like this was a cohesive and well wrapped up story, even with just staying within the game.
It's cohesive for sure. It's just it's so much more satisfying to me knowing all of what's going on behind the scenes and why things are the way they were. And we get most of that, to be fair. But for now, we're going to go off to the junk heap. We took care of the tree. We got the fragment here, the stone fragment puzzle piece. So now we're off to the junk heap. I don't know about you, but this is my least favorite area, I think. And I think it's because you have to go back so often.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this area was cool the first, 5 times I went there, but then I had to go there 15 more times and clear out that dungeon so many times that by the end I was if I have to go back to the junk heap and if I have to go back in the basement and do that minecart section again, I'm going to scream. So...
Yeah, the minecart section especially, it's such a pacing killer. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, well, the dungeon design in there is just, you walk into a room, the door's locked, there's a bunch of enemies that come out. They come out really slowly. They're invincible for a couple seconds after they appear. It's just a pain. So it's example 1 of 100 of things that are kind of a pain.
Mm-hmm. And like you had mentioned, we're coming back here a lot for story reasons and also for necessary side quest reasons.
Yeah,
that we'll talk about soon. But we're going back there right now, and we get this flashback of Jacob and Gideon, the 2 brothers that we met before in the junk heap. They're looking for scraps because they do a repair and forge business. And this enormous piece of metal sheeting or scaffolding falls. And Jacob sees this, and he pushes Gideon out of the way, the younger brother. And this kills Jacob, the older brother, in the process. And what I like a lot about this is it's framed in such a way that Gideon tries to save him, but it doesn't show Jacob. It shows, like, Jacob's POV, kind of. We see Gideon pulling, and we hear this pop, and then he just stops and screams. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty clear that he rips his arm off.
Yep. Yeah. Pretty brutal.
It's really brutal.
And his he snaps after this. Like, NieR has handled his, tragedy in his life by internalizing all this anger, and Gideon is just screaming the rest of the time about how much he hates machines and how, if anything good ever happens to him, he's going to use it so he can kill more machines. He's basically us, but with machines instead of shades.
Pretty much, yeah. The reason for that is because, the mom got murdered earlier, right?
Yeah.
5 years ago.
Oh,
and when Jacob died in the aftermath of the scaffolding falling, Gideon sees a machine with a shade piloting it. So he doesn't like machines. And this gets incredibly heavy-handed. It's almost funny how really on the nose it is.
Yeah. Thinking of what happens. I suppose we'll get there, but after you beat the boss of this area, it's, like you said, kind of funny.
It really is. It's not subtle at all. I don't want to call it objectively bad, but it's probably some of the weaker writing in here. I know why they do it. They're really trying to reinforce a specific recontextualization, but it just falls flat for me because it's so it's just so hyperbolic and exaggerated.
Yeah, the thing that's going to make this a little bit more interesting a little bit later on doesn't need Gideon for us to get it. We get it just from what we're doing. So, yeah. So back into the junk heap. We're going to clear out this dungeon again.
Yeah, and we're gathering materials this time. Gideon says he's going to make us this really powerful sword, but we need to get him the materials in exchange for that. And we do, and he says, this is going to take a while. Why don't you go off and, do other things? I'll send you a letter when it's done. So we say, okay. We go back to Popola, and she suggests going to the Airy again. She thinks that, she had heard that they believe they have a key to this puzzle, and they also have formed a little marketplace. They're opening themselves up to the world after having closed themselves off forever. Vice immediately says, hey, this is a little suspicious, and Popola agrees, but NieR doesn't care. He just wants to kill shades. So I guess what NieR says goes.
Yep.
So that's where we're going now. And Popola is thrilled to hear this. She goes, oh, okay, go get him. And we go.
Yeah, it's, this never struck me as odd because we have already changed one area's entire culture before. So why, to me, this was like, oh, interesting. They're breaking their isolation. Well, Facade also changed all their rules earlier, so why not?
Yeah, I suppose so. The whole reason that they did is because of NieR's meddling. Well, because NieR helped them out.
Right.
They don't like NieR over here, so I don't know. I saw this as more suspicious just because of their general attitude, and
yeah,
we come to find that Vice was right. This is suspicious because when we get there, the village chief is muttering incessantly, saying that everything is over, we're all doomed, and etc. So we say, that's cool, man, but what about that letter? And he doesn't know what we're talking about. He didn't write the letter. So our warning flags are going off. But rather than leave, we go and check out the marketplace because there is one now. There's a bustling marketplace in one of the center pillars.
Yeah, a bunch of people out there with all their, it's like a farmer's market. They got all their stands and stuff, and you can shop for a while. It only continues once you go talk to the the guard that's out there.
Yeah, I even think I don't know if it's a weapon that's only found here, but there's definitely a weapon that you need that can be bought here.
Yeah, I just got in the habit, like once I knew that I needed to collect weapons, of checking every weapon shop and buying all their weapons as soon as possible.
It's a good strategy for this one for sure. When we do talk to that guard that you mentioned, Dave, he says that he's heard about us. He's like, "Oh, you're with Kaine. Like, oh, we've heard about you. You're the Shade Hunter." And of course, NieR can't resist. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna kill every fucking Shade."
Yeah.
You can't stop him. You get him on Shades, and he's just gonna talk no matter who's around. And now he done messed up, because what this triggers is this emotional fear response in this person that just he sort of gets stuck in a loop, like saying every Shade, every one, just over and over again. And this is where the whole facade breaks, and he, along with several of the other people in the marketplace, they turn into Shades.
Right.
And I think this is definitively the first time that we've ever seen a Shade take a human form.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely the first time. And so this was a trap. Admiral Akbar wasn't here to warn us, and we got.
It's true. It's true. We did. Some villagers are still human, though. That's important. And they are actively blaming us as we're running around killing the Shades. They're saying, this is all your fault. You brought this here. And this is really tying back into that theme of perspective that we were talking about on the last episode.
Yeah.
And that's going to get really strong as we continue through here.
Yeah. And during this thing, it's kind of like chaos. So you're trying to chase down these Shades, but there's also humans running around. And so like I was trying not to hurt the humans, trying to kill the Shades. And I think that it's during this part, Emil says something to the effect of like, I think these are humans or something like that. And Weiss is like, no, they're Shades. Let's kill them all.
More or less, yeah. Emil definitely calls out that there are humans there. And we see Kaine fighting with one, in fact. We see her fighting a woman with swords. Yeah. And this woman's younger brother is behind her, and he's screaming, he's crying. And Kaine's like, no, she is a Shade. And then she just cuts her down, which obviously makes the little brother freak out. Mm-hmm. He's like, you're the monsters. This is your fault. But his sister does then turn into a Shade. And this is now the second time this Shade is going to surprise Kaine and give a seemingly lethal blow to her. So once again, she is down for the count.
Right, and she's down for the rest of this sequence here. And this is, in my game, well, probably forever, I guess, following the chronology in this one too, the second time that Kaine's died in the last 3 hours or so.
Mm-hmm. It's very weird, because I would venture to say that she's clearly more powerful than NieR, but she somehow is always on the wrong end of a sword.
Yep.
This is actually a really cool boss fight, I thought, at least in its conception. In the middle of the square, this like huge swath of Shades appears. It's just this black hole, and it's sucking up the villagers for power. Emil is going to help us fight it, which is pretty cool. We get to finally see his powers on display, and it's really strong.
Yep. But
he loses control pretty quickly. As we're nearing the end of this fight, he can't control it anymore. The ultimate weapon is being deployed, is what Weiss says. And Emil just radiates this intense, strong nuclear blast. It's like a bomb going off.
Yeah, and it wipes out not only the boss, but the entire area is destroyed. When like the dust settles and everything, like the area had been lined on either side with all of these boardwalks and these iron homes kind of like built up into the side of the cliffs, and they had a wooden maze at one end of the area for some reason. All of that is destroyed. It's all fallen down into the canyon now. There's nothing there.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I mean, Emil is the one person that is overly concerned for the well-being of others, and he wipes out an entire village. And it's not even his fault. It's the result of his new horrific body that he also hates. So he's having a tough time coping with this.
Yeah.
And NieR, this is it's almost funny if it weren't so sad. NieR is just like, we can't look back.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Emil is like, he's like pounding the ground, like crying, like loudly sobbing because of what he did. And it's this, you have like a brief moment where you're not sure who's going to say something, but yeah, it's like, all right, we got the third key. It's time to move on.
Exactly. And I keep calling it funny and we're laughing about it, but this they're writing NieR this way on purpose. Like, it's all to a point. There's a reason that they're doing this. NieR is singularly focused on nothing but killing shades and saving Yona. In that order at this point, I would argue.
Yeah. I mean, saving Yona is kind of like going to be the result of the goal, I guess. You know, the goal is to find the Shadow Lord, and we're going to kill a bunch of shades along the way. And we think Yona's there, but we're definitely going to go kill the Shadow Lord. So like, it's not anymore. It's not talking to Popola about intel on where Yona is. It's intel on where the Shadow Lord is, because we're going to go kick his ass.
Right, exactly. And I love how it's contrasted with Emil too. It's such a distinct contrast, and it makes for a great payoff, I think. But unfortunately, we don't get that for a while because we've got to go back to the junk heap.
Yep.
We get that letter. Our sword is done. And of course, Gideon has a favor for us. He wants us to avenge Jacob and go kill all of the robots.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but like, so you get this sword. It's supposed to be like this super badass sword, right? You get the sword and it's like it's probably not as good as the sword you were using or the weapon that you were using. It's a pretty consistent thing throughout the game where you find a new weapon and it's the same or less powerful than the one you were using. So cool, I have a new weapon, but not using it.
Yeah, I don't really think that the weapon variety in this game is very good. I mean, they're all very neat looking, and they've got backstories attached to them, which is kind of cool. But functionally in combat, I don't know. There's just not a whole lot of variety. It's kind of a bummer. And I think when we get this one too, isn't it like a third of it? And we have to get the rest, like build the rest later, or did that already happen? Did he give us the third and then
he gave us the finished product? Here, you can upgrade it, but he gave you the finished product.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the new weapons give you new, not each individual weapon, but each category has unique animations. So at least that's cool if you want to, because you're going to be fighting a lot. You're going to do the same like 3 or 5 hit combo thousands of times throughout the game. So switching up the animations is helpful sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. So we're going into the junk heap. There is indeed a shade down there, and he's riding / piloting this humanoid shaped robot, and it leads to a boss battle. Mm-hmm. The robot is talking the whole time about completing his mission. I also think this is maybe the first time that we hear, like in this fight, Kaine sort of speaking out loud to herself, directed at nobody in particular, which is, I mean, it's not really foreshadowing because we know that she's possessed by a shade. We don't know that she could speak to shades. That's kind of a spoiler, but not really. You could put it together pretty easily.
Well, yeah, I mean, this seemed to me like Kaine is talking to the shade half of her. Like, now that we know that, like, at the beginning of the game, I thought she was like, you know, half human, half shade. Like, one of her parents was a human, the other one was a shade. And so she comes out this, you know, half human, half shade lady. Now but we find that that's not the case. It's actually like a possession. So there's a different entity in her, and I thought she's just talking to that.
There's really nothing else it could be, right?
Yeah.
But that's happening now. This boss battle has 2 different phases. Once you kind of beat up the robot a little bit, he crafts wings onto himself, and it starts trying to escape, saying that he's talking about protecting something, and escaping, etc. But we do eventually take that down. The only tricky part with this one is dodging the falling debris. I found it a little tricky. I don't know, but otherwise it's a pretty standard boss battle.
Yeah, this is not a difficult game. There's only one fight in the entire game that I thought was like the least bit difficult. So they're pretty basic, but the boss fights are usually enough of a spectacle to be interesting at least.
Yeah. Once we destroy the robot, we destroy the shade too. So we kill them both. This is where Gideon comes in and he starts screaming about how much he hates machines. He's kicking the downed robot.
Yeah.
It's really over the top.
That's the part I was talking about earlier where it was like, we didn't need him to come in and start screaming and kicking the robot. Like we know.
It's really silly.
One thing I like about this is the whole time, like the shade is your target. You don't really give a shit about the robot. You have to beat the robot to get to the shade because you kill shades. That's what we do. And so when you do, and the shade is finally like reachable down on the ground, NieR like runs over and you fuck the shade up. You kill it savagely.
Yeah, and we're going to revisit this again, so Don't worry. We're not done with the Junk Keep yet.
Nope.
For now, actually, we're doing more errands for Popola. We go back to Popola. We're doing some more errands. And it takes us to a shipwreck in Seafront. This is new and unique to Replicant. This was not in the original. Mm-hmm. It's a sort of adaptation of a story that is in Grimoire NieR, which is sort of the source book / lore book for this universe that provides actually a lot of context we don't get in the game.
Yeah.
So that's where this is from. The reason that we're there is because the red bag man is missing. We didn't talk about him a whole lot last time because he's annoying. He's really annoying. But he's the ferryman. He drives the boat, and him and his wife are constantly fighting. It's kind of funny, actually.
I thought it was the postman who was missing.
Well, he's also missing.
Oh, they're both missing.
They're both missing, yeah.
Everyone's missing.
And also a little girl is missing. I don't remember who the little girl is related to, but we hear that a girl has gone missing too.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's missing. So we go to the shipwreck.
This shipwreck is another one of these, like, it. When you think about it, it's not that different from other stuff, but they switch up the camera view. They give you some slight puzzling to do as you make your way through this kind of haunted, decrepit like shipwreck. Like you fall through the floor a couple of times. It's not as horror as Emil's house was in the first part, but it's still a little bit spooky because you definitely get the feeling that this is like a ghost ship and you're going to see something that you don't want to see. I was scared while playing this. I wasn't scared while playing Emil's house, but this part, I was like, "Oh, this is the scariest thing in this game."
Well, you're notably not a horror guy, right?
I'm not. So just throwing that out there. People will be like, Dave says he doesn't like horror games. I bet he's not as much of a baby as he says he is. I was scared during the shipwreck part.
Well, I don't blame you, man, because it shifts the perspective again. The camera, it's now a sort of side scroller-ish, kind of. And it's really dark. There are ghosts in here. We see what we think to be a ghost, and we hear what we think to be ghosts. And it is scary. Another thing to note, just super quick too, is that Kaine and Emil were already there. Like, they usually don't come into town, but they were there already. And Kaine is like, yeah, there is something in that ship. Like, I could feel it. I could tell.
Mm-hmm. And it's quiet in there, and there's a lot of like sudden noises and stuff. Not jump scares, but like you'll be walking and you'll hear a crash from the floor above you and stuff like that.
There's a lot of nice little world building elements in here too. So like you could learn that this used to be a slaver ship, like people selling slaves. They tortured the slaves. You get little notes as to what the crew members ate. You could learn like they got to request, no peppers, extra rice, things like that. Mm-hmm. It's really nice. I like the world building touches. It's cool.
And you also find these notes around there that have this like
Yes.
terrible, spooky handwriting on them, which to me was like, there's something really wrong with the crew. Like the crew has lost their minds and they've lost the ability to write. Basically, they write like small children do, or something like that, which we find out the reason for it. But that's what I thought as while I was going through here.
And it looks like a ghost ship, so you know, that's a really reasonable guess. You've split up from Kaine and Emil at this point, by the way. They've gone out just around a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Vice is also scared as you're going through here. He's a little bit of a fraidy cat.
Yeah,
It's
I like
pretty
this.
funny.
It's a cool side to his characterization, how he's such an arrogant prick most of the time, but he's very scared of this ship.
It's pretty good. He gets spooked because we hear this singing coming through this like voice pipe that they would use to communicate. It's like those playground contraptions that you used to have like in elementary school.
Yeah.
And we can hear singing. It's up until this point, I don't think we've talked about this. It's clearly a shade singing, because shades in this game, maybe we did talk about it actually, but they make these noises whenever they're defeated or just existing. And it's clear it's communication. It just sounds very garbled. And that's what we're hearing here. So we're kind of starting to put two and two together. Like there's a shade somewhere. That's also why Kaine is keen to it. We're also finding apples just everywhere, which is from the Red Bag Man. He is a big fan of apples.
You find a comical number of apples.
It is a lot of apples. One of the big fights that that couple had was that the Red Bag Man ate his wife's apples, and he ate like 10 of them, and then she left.
Here, I thought I enjoy apples because I eat one every single day. I got nothing on the Red Bag Man.
He's afraid of doctors. I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just scurvy.
That's what the shades are. They're doctors, and he's eating apples to keep them away.
What better way?
So you kind of follow this like apple trail down into the ship, and then you fall through the floor because it's a crumbling ship, and it is pitch black down there. And I was spooked because I don't like being in pitch black rooms. You grab your light, and of course, when the light comes on, there is a pile of mutilated bodies down there. There's blood everywhere, and you find the Red Bag Man.
Yep, he is one of the casualties. We don't know what happened as of right now.
Mm-hmm. But we know we're close now. There's blood everywhere.
In the next room, we're able to kind of get up to the top floor where Kaine says the presence is near there. We see this little ghost girl that we saw at the start. That's what kind of started all of this. We see her at the very beginning. That's what spooks Vice. And we see her here. And while we're all in this room, the postman that's been missing, he comes in. He says he's been coming here a lot. He found this girl here, shipwrecked. And he's just been kind of stopping by, making sure that she's okay. Mm-hmm. There's a really awkward bit where he asks Kaine for help because the girl is bleeding.
Yeah.
And he's like, what do I do, at that time of the month? And then he's just like, oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Very weird to put in there.
Yep. They do kind of come back to that later, but it's when you see it this time, you're like, you could have cut this out. I think this didn't need to be here.
Yeah, it was. It was. I don't know. It was very strange. But Kaine immediately knows. Like she says, stay back, stay away from this girl. She is a shade. And no sooner does she say that, this girl shoots tentacles just out of her back, destroying the ship. The postman falls through the floor, and she chases right after him. So we're after them. We have to do some quasi-platforming to get out of the ship. There's tentacles popping in to get in our way. Mm-hmm. We get onto the ship's deck, and it's a bright and sunny day. It's the beach. This world doesn't have a nighttime. That's important to note. So it's always sunny. We just assume that the shade won't come after us because sun and shade don't mix. I don't know if we mentioned that in the first one, but shades can't go in the sun.
I never noticed that because there are shades out in broad daylight all the time.
There are, but when they're in the daylight, they start to like smoke and steam, and if they're in there long enough, they will die.
Huh. I never noticed.
It takes a little bit, but it does happen. It's pretty neat.
Well, this shade is not like the other shades because this is not only is this a shade, this is the biggest shade in the entire game. It is like a sea monster shade, and you have a boss fight against it, and it really, simple boss fight mechanically, but the scale of it is so cool because it's so big. And there's a part on the ship, and then there's a part when you're down on the beach, and again, it's like the scale of it is great. There's a part, if you do it correctly, you can like run up its tentacles and go like hit her, hit the little girl shade that's like being puppeted, I feel like, up at like the head area.
I don't remember if that's exclusive to Route C and D, but
it might be.
You can do that.
Yeah.
But because anyway, what this is, it's a giant kraken-like thing, and this girl is a part of it at the very top. She's like kind of morphing out of it. So this is her. This is who this little girl named Louise is.
Mm-hmm.
When we're on the beach, we're fighting it. The postman kind of wanders in, just bumbling over, and Kaine takes him hostage because she knows that the Shade cares for him, and she's like, I've got this guy. I'm going to kill him. Let him go. This doesn't happen though. What does happen is the Shade pretty much just wipes us out with one attack. It's pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. And it looks like we've lost because nobody has the strength to fight. This thing is dominating us. But as she's about to finish us off, the postman just walks up to her with this wooden plank and starts beating her tentacles. He can't do anything because, he's just a normal dude. But what he's saying is... the whole time he's saying things like, we could never be together, you disgust me, and this clearly just makes the Shade give up. And while it's distracted, NieR is able to shoot one final magic shot at its head, finishes it off, that completely demolishes it. We get one last shot of the girl, Louise, looking out into the sunset as she and the Kraken just kind of dissolves.
And then we go back to the town and we have to tell the red bag lady that her husband is dead. And by now we're very familiar with this relationship. These two are like famous throughout the towns for being this couple who's always like shouting at each other, making a big scene. But they're through a couple of side quests, you can tell that they really do like really love each other, but they're just famous for their blow ups. So you have to go break the news to her, and she is distraught.
It's another instance of the voice acting being pretty good.
Yeah. Yep. For a character who doesn't have that many lines, the red bag lady.
Yeah, it's really nice. She knows what happens even if you try to lie to her too. So. Kaine also kind of shrugs it off whenever we ask her, like, hey, how did you know that? Like, how did you know the Shade felt that way? She's like, oh, just a hunch, don't worry.
This is something to put a pin in for later. This Kaine's what she knows and what she doesn't know.
So, of course, we're going back to Popola. She's having a tough time decoding one of the portions of the key. Mm-hmm. So we go home and we check our mailbox and we find that we've got a wedding invitation. As per rule number 25,656, we are invited to the Royal Facade wedding. And it's this huge thing about the rules. Then at the very end, at the very bottom, it's like, P.S. Hey guys, it's me. Sorry about all that. You should come to the wedding.
I was just laughing there because I remembered when you get there, you go to Facade for the wedding, you go into the king's palace, and you talk to Emil, and he's like, I'm so excited. I love weddings. I can't sleep for days before a wedding because he's so excited. And It's very cute to me. Number one, when has Emil ever gone to a wedding before? But number two, the fact that he's so excited that he can't sleep is very cute.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very sweet. He has a line here that says like, I wish I could be the bride. And, Vice is like, oh, don't worry, like you'll find yourself a bride one day. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. This is confirmed by Yoko Taro. So this is this is Emil. He's not coming out, but Emil is gay, and this has been confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of weirdos on the internet didn't like that at first. What are you gonna do?
As weirdos do. Yep.
The king, it turns out, is marrying Fira. That is who Emil wishes he could be. Kaine doesn't really feel welcome here. Emil, like we said, super excited. And the wedding day comes and everybody's really happy. It's a huge ceremony. Everybody's dancing. It's in the sun. Great. But this is, as long as Yoko Taro has something to say about it, not for long.
Yep. You got a couple of like cutscenes of a wolf, but it's like stronger than the regular wolves. And in a cutscene here during the celebrating, the wolves attack Facade. It's actually a person runs in, one of the guards, and is, in their dying breath, like, the wolves, and then they die. And there's a cutscene of the wolves attacking, and the big one just comes in and just grabs Fira in its mouth and throws her against the wall. And she's, laying there dying before long.
Yeah, we run into a bunch of wolves on the way here, and I think one of our party members comments on it. So you could see this is coming. Maybe not to the degree that it happens, but that they're going to be here, and they're going to cause problems. Mm-hmm. Like you said, they maul Fira, and they retreat after not too long, after not too much of a fight. But Fira does die here. She gives her last words of encouragement to the king and sort of dies in his arms. And right there, he swears vengeance on the wolves. He's like, that's it. This evening, tonight, we're going to their lair. They all die.
Mm-hmm.
He's taken the NieR path.
Everyone, him, the dude at the junk heap, NieR, everyone's out for vengeance.
And this gets recontextualized a little further too in the next playthrough. In playthrough, I think it's B. I don't think it's C or D. We could talk about that when we get there, but we'll get there.
Yep.
The battle with wolves, it's basically just a lot of wolves. I mean, they don't do anything new. It's just a lot of them.
It's not super interesting. There's just 25 of them at a time. And you can, they die quicker than regular wolves out in the desert. You can like shoot them twice with the magic blast, like the rapid fire one, and they'll die. So it's basically just, and like the lock-on shifts automatically after you kill one. So it's basically just hold down the rapid fire magic button. It will be over soon. The big one will jump down. You have to fight the big one, but it's pretty easy.
The big one is the one that's possessed by a shade, and you can see it. You could see it all over its body.
Yeah.
But we don't end up killing the big one. The king does. There's a scene where he's facing off with it, and he just runs forward and impales it with his spear.
Yep.
And it dies on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
So the king got what he wanted. I mean, he avenged Fira in a way. We got our piece of the puzzle. As far as we're concerned at this moment, everything is terrific.
Uh-huh. Off to fight the Shadow Lord.
Yeah, at this point, we've got all of our pieces. Vice is still insisting that this all feels too easy, and NieR just says, shut up, man. It's really good. Like, I know they're writing NieR like that on purpose, but it's so funny because if NieR would just stop for 1 second and think about it, he would realize that everybody is right. He's too blind. And that's his character flaw.
Yeah, this is 5 years in the making. He spent 5 years killing shades, thinking about killing the Shadow Lord. He's probably not thinking about anything else.
He is all out of bubblegum, so he's only got one other option.
Yes.
We're back to the first place we found Vice again, but this time we can move beyond the doors because we've got that key. The inside area here sort of resembles like the bone structure of a church. Like if you bombed a church and only the scaffolding remained, it looks like that. but there's also nature and stuff growing in here. There's a weird bird puzzle. It's a word puzzle, and I want to get your take on this. I know what the puzzle is getting at. I just don't know why they're here.
Yeah,
Like just protecting what's inside.
I think so. It's a way for them to make sure that only the worthy can come in, and only the ones who know, what's really going on or something like that. Now, that being said, I got all these questions right, even though I don't think I ever learned them somewhere.
Well, and that's the thing is I don't think you learn all of these definitively in this playthrough. So these birds, you have to talk to the birds to get into the next chamber, and they ask you 3 questions. The first one, why did humans disappear from the world? That one's pretty easy because of a black disease. You get two choices for each of these. Mm-hmm. That one's easy. How can humans extend their lives? Question 2. Answer, by separating body from soul. We can piece that together if we read the documents we find from the lab. Like we're not directly told it, but we can infer it. The one that I never got was question 3, which is, what is the destination of souls? Answer, they are placed in their corresponding shells.
Yeah.
That I don't know that we learned that by this point.
Honestly, dude, I did not reference any documents. I just picked the answer that sounded the coolest, and it was right all 3 times.
You can try as many times as you want too. Like there's not a penalty, I don't think.
Yeah. But this is and I didn't really even think too hard about these because I didn't know what was coming. I just was like, yes, humans extend their lives by separating the body from the soul. Of course, that's how immortality works or something like that. So,
well, something like that indeed, because we're going to find exactly what something like that is in this next room. Because when we get in here, and this is my favorite part of the game by far, I think. When we get here, inside is Devila and Popola. Huge shocker.
Yeah, huge shock
going through.
And again, I played Automata first, so I knew them from their role in that game and how do I phrase this? What their station is in that game. So then to see them here trying to stop you on your mission was a big shock to me. And it immediately, I was like, okay, I know how this ends. Now I'm in the middle part. Finally, I'm in the middle part. And I get to find out why they are the way they are in the next game.
It's like when all of us as kids saw Star Wars Episode 3 for the first time.
Yeah.
And got we knew what happened before, we knew where the story goes, and now everything is just kind of bridged together. Mm-hmm. That's an exciting story setup for me personally.
Yeah.
I like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's cool. And you and the party are like, oh, sweet, Devila, Popola, what are you doing here? Come to help out? And they're like, no, we need you to turn around and leave.
They're very casual. They're like, well, I don't suppose you'd like to just go home now.
Yeah. You've come all this way. Guess we're doing this, huh?
Yeah. The second that we start to ask questions, though, that's when they're like, no, we're asking now. You don't get to talk. Mm-hmm. And they kind of lay everything out on the line for you. They raise their weapons whenever you say, we're not going home. We're finding Yona. They say this fate was predetermined. We were hoping to put it off another 100 years or so until the next generation came along. And during the fight, they also call Weiss a traitor.
Yeah.
As they're stealing his powers from him. Which, I mean, it's not really stealing because they explain these came from us in the first place. We were just letting you borrow part of it. This is ours.
They yell at him with contempt. They hate Weiss.
Mm-hmm. And if you're an astute player / podcast listener, you might remember Weiss was called a traitor before by Grimoire Noir. Mm-hmm. So now we really don't know what's going on, and neither does he, because he's suddenly really unstable and sort of glitchy. He's skipping like a tape recorder when he's trying to talk. Mm-hmm. We've heard this once before in the very beginning when Weiss first gets his powers. I don't know if that was intentional, I don't know if there's a direct link, but that's the only time we've heard this previously. We do fight Devil and Popola, though. They basically just do magic attacks and teleport through the floor. It's not too bad. You don't want to plow through them too quickly because they're talking the whole time, and it's the very least it's world building a little bit. But once we're done with them, they kind of stop and they're like, all right, like, you've got to face the truth for yourself. Like, we don't have the answers for you. Go ahead. And then they fly away, like actually fly away. That part was kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
But this next section, well, I said this section is my favorite in the game. That, and then the next section is this middle part. I don't like at all.
With the boar and stuff.
Yes, dude. You're fighting your way up through the rest of this tower, through various shades, but mainly through this boar that just keeps coming back. There's also a really cool thing here with these sort of ghostly figures dancing.
Yeah.
And they turn into shades. The music there is a waltz version of a previous theme in the game, and I cannot for the life of me remember it. I did not write it down. I know it to hear it. But it is a previous theme, and as they turn into shades, the theme becomes dissonant and ugly. It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's the only cool part about this to me, because I hate fighting this boar.
Well, fighting the boar sucks, but I did think the contrast of like what you expected behind the door, once you got past Devil and Popola versus what you got, which is this ballroom, people dancing and stuff like that. That was cool. I liked that kind of bit of the unexpected. And I hope that everyone else thinks it's cool, because you're going to see it again a couple times.
It is cool. It is cool. The boar is annoying because he keeps coming back and he does the same move over and over. It's the same thing.
Takes a long time to kill. Not difficult, just takes a long time. Again, play this game on easy if you're listening to this and you want to go play it.
Yeah, 100%. And you can switch difficulties, I think, at the title screen too.
Yep.
So no worries about starting a new file. After fighting the boar for like the 6th time, somehow the King of Facade with his men show up.
Not sure
I don't know how.
No.
Right? There's one way into this chamber. And we came straight here from Facade. How did they get here?
Something tells me they're not going to solve the bird bath puzzle to get into the castle.
Well, that too. Like, how are the birds going to understand them? How'd they get here? There's just, if I have one major complaint about this game, and major is a bit of an exaggeration, there's a lot of Deus Ex Machina in NieR Replicant. Yeah. There is a lot of the writers just putting something in because it works for that moment in the story.
Yep.
If Yoko Taro does that more often, then he's just really adept at chaining the lore to what's going on. This is not one of those times, though, because there's no reason this kid should be here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. It's nice to see him. Like, they line up and they're like, how many rules prevent us from fighting this? Like, 6,702, sir. It's like, we're sure breaking a lot of rules today. Yes, sir. And it's like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's a good moment.
But they shouldn't be here.
Yeah. And so they, you, the player, and NieR and Kaine and everybody are fucking sick of fighting this boar. So it's welcome when they say like, oh, we'll hold the boar off. Like, you run through the door. Don't worry about us. And they have to like literally shove NieR out the door. Yeah.
Kaine gives him a slap on the face to like bring him back to reality. But we're finally able to get through the halls, and we get into what looks like a bombed office building. Mm-hmm. You can see other buildings like outside. This looks like NieR Automata, if you're familiar with that game. Mm-hmm. If you're not, it just looks like any office building in your local city, just bombed and destroyed. Right. And Devil and Popola are there. And this is where they lay everything out on the ground for you. And here's the gist of it. Devil and Popola are not human. They're androids. They also tell us that we aren't human either, vice NieR, Kaine, and Emil. Mm-hmm. None of us are. We are all replicants. 1,300 years ago, humanity found itself on the brink of extinction because of this white chlorination syndrome. We didn't talk about this in depth in the first episode, And I'm not going to spoil a ton of what happens in Drakengard, but in ending E, a dragon, the dragon as it's called, and the giant fight. They're both destroyed. The giant leaves behind maso particles. This is what causes the white chlorination syndrome. Or excuse me, no, I'm wrong. The white chlorination syndrome is because, I don't remember if it's the dragon or someone else, but they force humans to make a pact. And it's either turn into legion, which are monsters that serve the dragon, or turn into pillars of salt. It's one of the two. That's white chlorination syndrome. They experiment with Maso to kind of fix that, and that led to Project Gestalt, which is separating the human soul from their body. The idea is they're putting the souls into storage for however long it takes. However long it takes for white chlorination syndrome to go away, that's how long the souls will be saved until, that passes along. The bodies then are called replicants. They are artificial husks, but they do age. They do have emotions and personalities. They can fuck. Like, it's explicitly stated they can fuck. They can't procreate, but they can fuck. I think like when they're having when someone has a baby, what it says is like Popola and Devila go to them and they're like, "Hey, you're having a baby, congrats!" And then they like knock them out. And then when they come to, they just have a baby. Nice.
I sure hope that doesn't happen to me.
It's pretty funny.
One thing, though, I want to just note for people listening along is that knowing about the white chlorination syndrome is not important to getting the main message of the game, I feel like. Because I played this game, no idea about white chlorination syndrome until I beat the game and started reading things and watching YouTube videos.
Yeah. That's not the important part. The important thing to know is that the souls and the bodies were separated. The souls were planning to get put back into the bodies. But what happened is that the souls would begin to relapse and turn into shades. That's the problem. There is one person, one gestalt, excuse me. The gestalts are the souls. One gestalt that is sort of the prime one that is able to fix everything. And that's what Devila and Popola are doing. They're trying to fix everything. But from our point of view, they're siding with the Shadow Lord. We don't know why.
Right.
And they have this really great quote that I love. One of them says, "You have your own motives, your own desires, and we have ours." I'm afraid it really is that simple. It doesn't need to be anything more than that. It's like we don't need a big like flashback. We don't need the white chlorination backstory. It's just some characters have some motivation, others have the others. That's all there is to it. Yeah, it's just business.
There's no drawn out evil villain speech or something like that during this. They give you the backstory, and then it's abundantly clear that you're not just gonna like lie down and quit. So we're moving on. This started to like, once this came up that you are replicants and that the gestalts are out there and the ultimate goal is to rejoin the two together. Suddenly I remembered that, the Shadow Lord looks a lot like NieR, and back at the beginning of the game in the prologue was another NieR and another Yona. So then my mind was instantly like, oh, that's what's going on here.
Yep. They don't explicitly spell that out, but it's not hidden. Like, that is what's going on. The Shadow Lord and NieR are one and the same. But for right now, we haven't met him yet. We're doing another fight with Devila and Popola.
Yeah.
This is really cool because this it's a tougher fight, and this has a remixed sort of Song of the Ancients where they're both singing. It's very cool.
Yeah. It's a very good song.
It starts out kind of tough and gets tougher, but after a while, we kind of beat down Devila. And I think this is my favorite scene in the game. Like this until we get to Shadow Lord is maybe my favorite stretch of this whole game.
Yeah.
It's terrific.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to play this scene. I'm going to insert the dialogue from here so everyone can hear what I'm talking about.
Popola, are you crying? No, don't die. You know, Popola, I understand now why we're twins. It's because we were born without souls. Devila, I can't stop the bleeding. Oh God, I can't stop it. This world is too lonely for one without a soul. There's too much emptiness. Our souls are missing. And yet somehow our tears still work. It's kind of weird. Sorry, sis. I love you. Devila! Devila! Don't you go! No, I can't be alone!
Let's stop this now.
Stop? Stop? Now you want to stop? You think you have the luxury to stop? You cut down my sister like a goddamn animal and now you want to stop? Popola, wait! It doesn't have to. No one stops! It's way too late to stop! No one stops!
Please, don't do this, Popola!
I'm torn a little bit on this scene.
Yeah.
Because it is my favorite in the game. It's incredible. It's the voice acting. It's just terrific. It's so emotional. But then they have this. There's this line as Devila is laying there that you've all heard, and she says, "Our souls are missing, and yet somehow our tears still work." It's kind of weird. That that hit me in the face when I heard it. I was like, "What?"
Yeah, it seems like a Google Translate line.
But then they come right back after that with, Popola is wailing, saying, "I can't be alone," and then the famous "Nobody stops."
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how are you going to put such a bad line before that?
Yeah,
It's so silly.
The I kind of thought it was cool how Popola just, like you said, snaps, and she is like unhinged, screaming, maximum anger, and like I think like before, I think that she and Devila did not like want to kill you or your party. Now she's just completely snapped wide open. She's on the offensive now, and you have to finish the boss fight. It's not that hard, but she is using like tons and tons of magic, like, everything she's got.
It's everywhere. And when you're doing this fight with just Popola, it is just the raw, unarranged Song of the Ancients playing.
Oh, cool.
So something before completely serene, just a purely unencumbered piece of almost folk music, now entirely different meaning. Completely different.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So well done. I love this scene, this whole sequence of this game so much. It is so good.
It's great. And then you get into what I think is probably my favorite scene, one of my favorite scenes of the game here, when you beat Popola, but in like, I feel like, her dying, last action is to summon all the magic she can and kind of like trap you, pull you back, because Emil's using his magic to like float you across this gap, basically. Emil to the rescue.
Yeah, this is like Star Wars shit. This is what I mean when it's like Deus Ex Machina a little bit, because we never knew that they could do this, and it's just we're seeing it now for the first time because it's exciting.
Yeah, it's like, hey, Emil, you were able to put us in a bubble and float us places. Couldn't you have floated us up onto the bridge in front of the junk heap a few times, buddy? But
or maybe past the whole minecart section.
yeah, but he's doing it now. He's figured it out. He's learning what his body is capable of. Just like every young boy does.
Well, he's at that age, you know.
So-
he's at that age. In a couple years, Poppola's going to come up to him, knock him out, and he's going to wake up with a kid.
Yep, that's the natural order of things. So
Yeah, in this
there's nothing to
fucked
be
up world, it
ashamed
is.
of. Everyone goes through it.
Everybody goes through what we conveniently call the Poppola special.
Yes, I hope everyone doesn't go through what happens to Emil here.
Yeah, it's brutal. I want to be clear though. I don't think that this Deus Ex Machina stuff tarnishes the story, because I think it does everything else really well. But I could see somebody being like, well, this is just sloppy. I could see that argument.
Yeah, but you are in such an emotionally charged scene here that, like, I think that if this scene isn't landing for you, if you're thinking about Deus Ex Machina during this scene, then this story is not working for you, and it's a larger issue, I feel like. So
Yeah.
it's this scene is really really powerful. This is probably the most powerful scene in the game, in my opinion, coming up right here.
If not it's certainly one of them. What Emil does is he kind of creates a separate bubble as we're being pulled away. He creates a separate one that pushes Kaine, NieR, and Vice out, and just leaves Emil being pulled in. And he's saying this whole time, he's like, I've hated my eyes, I hate my body, like I've done nothing but destroy my whole life. Just everything I look at dies.
Mm-hmm.
I could finally save something. And Kaine, this is maybe one of the very few times Kaine shows emotion, like other than anger. And she does not want this to happen. She's like, get the fuck back here and blah, blah, blah. What I love about this scene though is as Emil's getting pulled in, he's not giving this like hero's final speech. He's not talking about like vanquishing evil, how he's in the right. He's confused.
Yeah. He's so what happens is you're in this blue bubble, the four of you with Vice, and Emil splits it. So your bubble continues on to the other side of this gap, while Poppola's magic pulls Emil in, and he is scared. There's a quote from him as he gets pulled in. It's like a black hole almost, like it all just sucks into one, and then there's nothing there. And as it's happening, there's a quote where Emil says, NieR, character name, you can put your own name in here. So he said, Dave, I just want to see you again. I'm so scared. I don't want to die. And it's brutal, man. Like, this was a real rough scene because Emil is the best. He's such a sweet little boy.
And he's not even like, he's happy to save his friends, but as he's going away, his last thoughts of them are, I don't know if they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. And then, like you said, he literally goes into a fetal position as what we can interpret around him being his reality physically begins to crack. Like, the screen starts cracking. And he says, I'm scared. I don't want to die.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's real too.
Yeah. Because he made this choice to sacrifice himself. And at the time, I'm sure he was like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to help my friends get on to the destination because you're so close. Like, and then once it starts to kick in about what's actually happening, he's scared because of course he is.
And the reality is, like, I think all of us at some point have seen an action movie or a fantasy movie where this happens and we think to ourselves like, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah,
like I would sacrifice myself for everybody else. But the reality is, in that situation, when your brain is firing chemicals like saying, hey, body, you're about to die, and I don't want that.
Yep.
Like, we're not going to be, oh, what McBain from The Simpsons. We're not going to be like Mr. Big Hero, right? We're going to be scared, and
Right.
and that's why this is so good. And it baffles me that it comes after, kind of weird that we can cry, right?
Yep.
I'm
this
sorry,
was,
I can't get over that.
This was the moment where when this happened, so this scene finishes, and my immediate thought was just, sadness about what had happened. But I instantly thought, like, I had heard so many people talk about how happy they were to see Emil in NieR Automata, because he has a little cameo in Automata. And I was like, I don't get it. And then once this scene happened, I was like, I get it now.
I will be the one to push back on that. I don't like it. It's not that I'm not happy to see him.
Right.
It's just that I've talked about this on the show so many times. When you bring back a character that has a really meaningful death, it cheapens the whole thing. And I personally don't like it. Like, yeah, I love seeing Emil in Automata. I'm like, oh, it's my buddy Emil. He's honking around as a truck for some reason.
Yeah.
And then
that's what I
I
meant.
missed his side quest too.
That's what I meant. It's not like they're happy that, like, the story is different or something like that. It's just like, holy fuck, Emil. Something like that.
Yeah. It's conflicting, right? It's conflicting.
Yeah.
It's good to see him, but at the same time, like, what did his death mean? I don't know. It's really good, though. It's like this whole reverse birth scene that gets complemented with the final scene of the game. Very cool. Kaine and NieR are both just shocked after that, but Kaine kind of comes to her senses first and kicks the shit out of NieR. Mm-hmm. It's mildly sexually charged, but I'm so glad they didn't run with that, because I think it goes against their characters, but I think it's confirmed that Kaine does feel for NieR in that way. It's just not, I don't know. You can tell there is some sexual tension there, but they don't lean into it and make it a point. It's for a moment, and then Kaine says, snap out of it. We've got work to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more on their relationship later, I think.
Sort of, yeah. We've finally reached the Shadow Lord. We're finally here. This is what it's all been leading up to. He's standing over a sleeping Yona. He's just sort of watching. He's talking in shade language. And he's not leaving Yona without a fight.
Mm-hmm.
This music is really good. That's the first thing that I noticed. In this fight, we're mainly facing him. Last time it was mainly Grimoire Noir, and we do have to beat Noir up just a little bit. But we're largely fighting Shadow Lord here, and he's very fast and fights kind of like NieR. He's got much more magic, though, that lets a lot of stuff spawn through the ground.
Yeah, he's, again, not a difficult fight, because this is not a difficult game, but you do have to kind of pay attention. You have to do a lot of chasing him from side to side in the arena, and then there's one part of the fight where he's floating up out of reach, and you have to really chase him around and try and jump up and fight him up in the air, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. But there's a really cool section at the end of the fight when Vice kind of like leaves you to go over and like hold him down, basically. And he's just shooting these streams of these, big red orbs at you, the bullet hell stuff. And you have to run up, avoid the attacks, hit the magic barrier. It will shoot you back to the beginning. Run up again, avoid even more, bullet hell stuff. And it's this final like desperate push to get up and kill him, basically. And it's all played up really well. The music's fucking great. It's a really fun spectacle again of a final boss fight. Absolutely.
Once we pummel him enough, Yona actually gets up and she says, wait. And everybody is shocked at this point because she hasn't been up for a while. And she calls out for her brother. And, she says, brother. And NieR is like, oh my God, this is what I've been working towards. But she runs right past him to Shadow Lord.
This is what we've been waiting for. And it's like, oh no.
And the way they frame it is great. It's from the side, and like you can see them overlap, and then she passes him, and he just stops. And she's begging Shadow Lord to stop. She's like, I don't want to do this anymore. She says, I don't need someone else's body. I don't want it. There's another girl inside this body. I can hear her. She won't stop crying. She says she wants to see her brother. It's not right that she can't see him.
Yeah.
NieR doesn't understand. This is kind of dense. NieR doesn't understand what's going on. He thinks she's possessed.
Honestly, I had like half of an idea of what was going on here, because there's so many things happening. There's a lot of information, and then Emil dies, and then you fight the final boss. There's a lot of information here. So in my podcast notes, I had a bunch of stream of consciousness, like trying to piece this together during this last part. I wasn't totally sure either, even though I was like 70% of the way there. Like I had the gist, but the details, again, hammered home as I replay this section 3 more times.
After she talks to Shadow Lord for a second, or he talks to her, and we just can't understand it. Mm-hmm. And she turns to NieR and says, "It's you, isn't it?" And this is like applause. This is perfect phrasing for a sentence that gets recontextualized as we go through the next playthrough. Yeah. It's really good. Like NieR sees this as her coming to. She's snapping out of it. But Yona recognizes, like, you are the person that this replicant is yearning for.
That's how I saw it too. I saw it the way NieR saw it. I saw it as Yona recognizing her brother.
Right. And it's framed that way because how else are we supposed to think about it?
Right.
I think it would take somebody that's really attuned to what's going on to realize on their first playthrough what's happening. I didn't catch it the first time. She apologizes, and she's saying, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. She looks back to both of us, to NieR and Shadowlord, and says, I love you, and then disappears. She kind of fades, evaporates the same way that Louise did. And this breaks Shadowlord. He is mad, and he's going to take it out on us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and this is the part of the boss fight that I was talking about. The second part where he's up in the air, you have to chase him around, and then that final thing where Weiss is holding him back.
Yeah. There is a quote that NieR says here during the fight. Again, they hide a lot of really good stuff, like, wow, so much is going on. And he says, you want me to understand your sadness? You think I'm going to sympathize with you? I swore to protect my sister and my friends. If someone puts them in danger, they must stand aside or be cut down. Mm-hmm. NieR, this is all tying back to the theme of perspective. NieR is so black and white. He's unchanging. He lacks so much critical information that might help him, but he's not even willing to consider it, to think about it. He all he knows is kill Shades, find Yona. He's done one of those things. There's only one thing to do now. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I've got to applaud. A lot of the writing in this is so good. It's so damn good.
Yeah. Yeah, really.
Until we talk.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? I'm done. That's the last time. Last time, everybody. I'm not going to shit on that line anymore. This is, Dave, this is exactly what you were talking about. Weiss kind of goes forward. He has one last little chat with NieR. He calls him his friend. He says, it's okay to call me Weiss. I like it, actually. It's pretty sweet. But then he kind of disappears. He's holding Shadowlord down. Like you said, you have to run up and bash him a couple of times. And then we kind of cut him down, and it seems like we're done. It seems like we've killed the Shadowlord. Kaine is holding Yona. She appears to be dead, but we can hear Weiss. He's speaking out. He doesn't have his body anymore, but he's like, hey, I could talk to you. I'm going to lose this, I'm going to lose my voice here soon, but Yona's okay. You just need to call her back using your memories. So we get this little scene where Yona is talking. She's like, what's my favorite book? It's this, of course. What's my favorite cookie? Oh, of course it's this. And then she says, who do I love the most? And the keyboard comes up, and you have to type in your character name, which is very sweet.
Yeah, it's why I said all those hours ago, if you're going to play this game, to type in your own name.
Yeah. It's really nice. It's really sweet. The two of you reunite. Kaine begins to leave. We ask her to stay with us, and she says, I've got my own shit to take care of. Mm-hmm. There is a shot that focuses on our arm, but, that's it. the last thing Yona says, they both look out into the distance, into the sunlight. And she says, "For the longest time, I heard someone telling me that they wanted to see the light, and now they can finally see it." And that ends playthrough A. So what did you think? Well, I think there's in playthrough A, you get to see a little shot of them before, like a previous shot of them. And then you get to see Yona and Shadow Lord kind of up above, as it were. But at the end of your first playthrough, what were you thinking? If you can remember back then?
I was pretty confused, but I also had the benefit of knowing ahead of time that you have to play the game multiple times. So in my head, I was confused, but looking forward to what was coming because I knew there was more coming. And I wonder if someone, you, Rick, I assume you knew this also, but someone playing NieR for the first time and doesn't know that the game repeats, how they're going to feel about this, because this is very clearly the end of the game. You get the credits and everything. And, it seemed to me like it wasn't as satisfying as I thought it was going to be. Of course, there's a reason for that, but that was what I was thinking. I was more confused and thinking like, okay, now what's going to happen after the credits?
I don't remember. Is this like Automata where it will tell you at the end, like ending A achieved?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So that does kind of give you a bit of a hint. I don't know, like when I first finished this, it seems like such an uplifting ending, right? But now we're going into playthrough B, so we're going to kind of talk about how some of this gets recontextualized.
Yeah.
And since we're just on this quote right here, the reason that this quote stands out to me, I heard someone telling me for the longest time that they wanted to see the light, now they can finally see it. The first time we go through, what we're thinking is like, oh, it's, Yona and NieR, they're seeing the light again. It's a metaphor. They're together now.
Mm-hmm.
Recontextualized, I think what that was Gestalt Yona wanting to see Gestalt NieR, who was the Shadow Lord, who we just slaughtered and killed. It's a completely different read and a completely different emotion knowing that context. And it's a little... It's hopeless. I don't think Yoko Taro succeeded making this game less depressing than Drakengard.
Like I said at the beginning, if this is less depressing, then I don't even want to know what goes on in Drakengard. How depressing can a game with a bunch of dragons and its servants really be, though?
I don't know, man. I know so little about it other than ending E that leads directly into this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'd like to get to it one day. It's just... man, it's tough to get into play-wise.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Yeah, for me, it's on to playthrough B. That was what I was looking forward to, because again, I knew ahead of time that not only is there more after the credits, but that it's the exact same game again after the credits. And by this time, by the way, I had opened up a weapons guide, and I was fully like, because I had read someone saying like, you need to play this minimum 3 times. And I was like, we're going to make sure that it's 3 times and not 4 or 5, because that would suck. So, yeah. So we start back at Kaine's being unpetrified right there. And playthrough B starts out with something that I think is really cool, which is the text adventure history. Text adventure, it's not really text adventure this time. It's just reading Kaine's history. But again, it's presented the way those text adventures were with, music and really, really good writing and stuff like that. So learning about Kaine's history and finding out who she was, who her grandma was from that one scene in the Airy earlier, finding out about her shade, parasite companion. Parasite's the word, probably. Really cool.
Yeah. So... We learn through this text adventure, through this descriptive prose, that the reason it's not explicitly spelled out. I think you do have to do a little bit of digging, but the reason that Kaine was bullied so much is because the kids learned that she was different, and what that means is she was intersex.
Now, what I heard is, number one, they never say the word intersex in the game.
No, they don't.
And... they say different in the game. I heard, cannot confirm, but I heard that this is a little translation tweak, that it's a little bit more clear in the Japanese.
I would imagine so. I know it's canon that she is intersex.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I know that if I were to play this for the first time without looking up any sort of wiki, that I wouldn't have read it that way.
Yeah, she's different. I thought her being different means that she's possessed by a shade, because we already know that she's possessed by a shade, and I didn't know that this was taking place before the possession started, or this began and the possession happens during this. You know what I mean?
But even then, it's like, okay, if it's not the shade, what is it? We don't really know. The two hints that we get are the word different.
Yeah.
And one of the bullies, when they're bullying her, they kind of stop and they say, "Show me." And she says, "No." And that's really the only two hints we get. Kaine herself explains to Emil, but she also uses the word different. But it is intersex. What happened, if you're interested in the lore, is that her replicant just had a freak accident when it was being created. She biologically assigned at birth, Kaine, the Gestalt, was female. Her replicant body just went through an accident during its creation and was intersex. That's the official lore of it all.
Yeah.
Whether or not that makes a difference to you, I don't know. It's not really my place to say.
Yeah. I just feel like a lot of people are going to come through this and just be like, yeah, she's different somehow. Little kids sure are shitty to each other. Kids bully each other. It's a real thing that happens, and happened to Kaine.
It's a very real thing that happens. What's a shame that the translation doesn't highlight that is because that gives the reason that she dresses the way that she does. It gives it a purpose, right? She dresses that way because she wants to highlight her femininity, right? She doesn't want to be seen as a quote-unquote freak, her words, the words of the villagers. She doesn't want to be seen that way. And I mean, otherwise she's presenting as a woman, right?
Yeah.
So she dresses that way because that is what society views as hyper feminine.
That's a good point. I never thought about that. Even in my episode on NieR Replicant, we were talking about how her costume, her dressing. Come on, Dave. Her costume, her design doesn't fit at all with anything else in the world. So the way you described it there does make a lot of sense.
Aha. Real time podcast episode comparisons going on.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we're missing out, or people that play this and don't go searching for it because they played it in English, they're missing out on that context, right? Because I mean, otherwise she's just dressed like a hussy, to quote Vice, for no reason.
Yeah.
Seemingly.
Yeah.
And I think that's really great. I know we've talked about this before in various episodes on 13 Sentinels, probably other stuff too. I personally don't have a problem with this kind of presentation of women or men, to be honest. But I know some people do. Having a reason for it, I think, is better than not. I mean, in any situation. Yeah,
and in my original thought process was that I thought that the contrast between the way Kaine acts and the way that she's dressed was interesting, and I thought the way she dressed was unnecessary. But now it makes a lot more sense this way. Now, do I still think it's unnecessary to see her entire ass for the whole game? Yeah, kinda. But it does make a lot more sense, and that's where I personally draw the line, because I'm a little bit infamously anti-horny in video games. Where I draw the line is if it makes sense in the world, then it's fine. It's cool. I may not want to stare at her ass the entire game, but it does make sense. So the way you described it does help out.
Kudos to the writing team, man. Not to me.
Well, kudos to you for putting two and two together. I'm just over here with my my picket signs and everything.
Hey, I can count to 4, but don't ask me to count past 6. What the heck come after 6? Do people still remember that video?
I have no idea what you're talking about, so we're just
gonna. I'm Shahid.
No idea.
Oh, bro, that's it's a really good early 2000s kind of a video. I think it might have been on Tosh at some point.
Early weird internet.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk through playthroughs B through D, kind of generally, you get to hear about how Kaine's possession of the shade came to be. Essentially what happens is the old woman that took her in, that always stood up for her, Kaine kind of adopted, quote unquote, as her grandma. The grandma swears just as bad as regular Kaine does, which is pretty funny.
Right.
Thinking of an old lady talking like that. But the two of them decide to live together. The old woman's health is failing, and eventually the enormous shade named Hook that we see in the beginning that we fight, that Kaine threatens to piss in its eye sockets, it comes through, destroys their house, and kills Kaine's grandma in a pretty graphic way. Like, very graphic.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it cuts Kaine's arm off, too. This is when the shade known as Tyrion possesses Kaine. We get to learn a little bit about Tyrion. He's basically just a psychopath. Like, he exists just for the thrill of the kill. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much it. But he can heal Kaine's broken arm, decapitated arm, and basically gives her more energy. And he's like, look, here's the deal. You can use me and my power to get revenge all you like. All I ask is you got to keep killing. If you don't keep killing, I am going to take over your body. And that's going to be that. And she says, well, I don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah, this Tyrion is probably my least favorite part of this, like, Route B. All the ways that character motivations and story moments are recontextualized, I don't like him. Every time he talked, I was like, this is just, it's a bit much, I feel like. Like, maybe there's not supposed to be nuance to Tyrion, but there is none. And it's very much like, kill, no, keep killing. And I was like, all right, like, we get it, you know.
That nuance goes away too whenever you learn, and I think this is all in Grimoire NieR or otherwise just like out in the ether as lore, but you learn that Tyrion wasn't even a relapsed shade. Like, he was just a gestalt that hadn't relapsed yet. He just happened to have a, quote, sick and twisted personality. So that kind of takes that nuance and drives it even further into the ground. Like, I'm with you. I'm not a big fan of Tyrion. I like the purpose he serves in the story, but as a character, like, I didn't care anytime he was talking.
Yeah, I suppose the defense would be that you get Tyrion pushing to kill, you know that NieR wants to kill, and then you're also getting more recontextualization of why you shouldn't be killing, while you get both characters with their intense motivations to keep killing, right? Because Route B, to me, was all about recontextualizing all of the story moments, but showing the shade side of things.
Yes, and let's talk about that, because that is, like you said, the largest purpose of playthrough B is to recontextualize everything, because now we've got the shade perspective.
Yeah.
Kaine can understand shades because of Tyrion's help, so now we know what the shades are saying whenever we're around them. Mm-hmm. And as we've learned at this point, shades are just relapsed gestalts. They are human souls that have relapsed and turned into shades. They are humans.
But the word relapsed doesn't mean that they're evil. It just means that they're not going to be compatible with Project Gestalt, right?
Well, sort of. When they relapse, they do lose their personality and their sentience. They kind of turn into, it just varies for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody relapses at the same rate. Some relapse immediately, and on the other end there is original NieR who was able to remain in stasis.
Okay, because most of the sections that you go through as you replay all of the game, basically, after the time skip, is you go through the plot beats, but at most of the plot beats, you get a shade's perspective on what's going on. So, like, when you go to the shrine, that big Mr. Potato Head looking dude was just fighting you because you're in there killing the small shades. It wanted to protect his friends. And the Junk Heap shade, there's a real sweet little short story about how it got separated from its mother and it was really scared, and this machine started to care for it. And so you get all these little, like, shade backstories. So again, it's not that the shades are, like, evil somehow. They're just, I guess I'm a little confused on what relapsing means, because all of these shades do attack you at some point.
Yeah. So when they're relapsing, after the relapse, they cannot join with their replicants anymore.
Right. That's what I meant.
That is gone.
They're not compatible anymore. So
some of them become hostile right away. Like those are the shades that we just fight out in the world, you know? Like they're not talking to us. Some of them, like in the very, very beginning, the shades that do not attack you, that is recontextualized because now you know those were just essentially kids coming up just seeing like, hey, what's going on, which you then slaughter them.
Yeah.
But not everyone relapses at the same rate, so that's why you've got like the little shade that befriends the robot named Beepy. He can still be a kid. Or you've got the bigger shades that are trying to protect the baby shades. They're not so far gone that they're just malicious beasts. That's my understanding of it. It is all a little bit kind of swirly and confusing, but I think that's it. I think it's just the rate of descent into madness just varies.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. I just thought that the ones that we talk to or the ones that we hear dialogue from or the key ones in our key plot moments are given characterization because they're plot relevant. And then all the other ones just aren't because they're not plot relevant and they can't all talk to you. That would be too much. And I mean,
that's the realistic reason, right? I mean, they can't give dialogue to everything.
Right. So I got a question for you. So we go through this Route B. Basically, we play the whole game again. We find out all of these shade stories and stuff. Why doesn't Kaine say anything? She's always on the brink of telling you a couple of times throughout the game. She's on the brink of saying something important, and then she always just kind of like, no, never mind. Let's move on. And it feels to me that now we know Kaine can understand them. She has been able to understand them this whole time. Never said anything throughout the entire game. She never tells you they're sentient, they're nonviolent, nothing. And the answer to me would be that she's afraid of what Tyrion would do, but Tyrion took over her body once, we beat the shit out of him, and she continues to not say the truth.
I think that's what it is. I think it is the fear of Tyrion fully taking over. If I had to extend a guess, I would say that when we do beat up Shadow Kaine, it's not fully like Tyrion taking over. It's just like almost all, like 75%. That's what I would assume. And I would assume that she just doesn't want Tyrion to take over because once he does, she's gone. Like she's gone forever. Maybe there's a bit in there about like, you know, what is NieR going to do if he finds out the truth? I don't know. I'm guessing it's probably the first one though. I don't know for sure. That's just what I would assume.
Yeah. It was just something that I was thinking of because there are, like I said, a couple sections throughout the game where Kaine obviously knows that the little shade in the junk heap is just a little kid hanging out with his robot pal, but she won't tell you. So it's a little like part of her character. It's not like a criticism of the game's story or something, but it's a part of her character where even she is too scared of Tyrion, probably the only thing she's afraid of, I guess, too scared to say the truth, even though she knows it for the entire game.
I would assume that that's correct because that's the first thing Tyrion says is like the second you go soft, you're done. Like you're out and it's my body. And I'm guessing she just doesn't want that to happen until, because at a certain point she wants to save Yona too, if for no other reason because NieR wants to, and you know they're very close. I would assume it's just the fear of Tyrion.
Yeah, that was what I had thought of too, but it was something like a nagging thing in my head of just like, hey, just fucking say it, you know?
It's one of the things I wonder if Grimoire NieR would expand upon it. Grimoire NieR, for those wondering, is similar to Perfect Works for Xenogears. It gives you the scope of everything, even stuff that they don't get into in the game, but it is not translated into English. There are some fan translations, but they're not complete, and I have read the quality is not the best.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll get back to you in like 4 years whenever I could read it.
Another thing, just another question for you. So in this playthrough B, it's being hammered home to you as you go through all of these scenes that you're the bad guy. You're the one who's, you're killing innocent people. You're killing the humans. You thought you were human. You're not. You're killing the humans.
Yep.
And at the end of the game, if you put the pieces together, you know that killing the Shadow Lord, since he's the last hope, you're dooming humans.
And that's not made, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Yeah.
Dave. That's not made explicitly clear, but it is canon. Shadow Lord is the one that can reunite everybody. Shadow Lord, Grimoire Vice, and Grimoire Noir are the ones that can reunite every single shade to every single replicant.
Yeah.
When Shadow Lord is killed, all that goes away. Shades can no longer go back to their replicants, so that means every Gestalt will relapse into a shade. Every replicant will eventually die. So we doomed the human race.
Yeah. And this is what, like, Devil and Popola didn't spell it out, but this is what they're talking about when they're like, this is our mission, basically.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, the characters never have to really deal with this, and because the game repeats, you start over. The characters don't start over with the knowledge what they're doing. So it's kind of unlike some of the games I've played. I won't say because it's a spoiler, but where the character knows that they're doing this, but they're pressed on by some mission. It's like it's totally on you. And so do you think this makes it like more or less effective than, other media that play with this? Because the characters don't ever have to contend with this until the very end, but they have such tunnel vision at the end that like NieR doesn't care. Kaine is not going to say anything. Emil dies and that's it. They never deal with it. It's all on you.
Well, I think that's effective because it makes us question our actions as we're playing a video game.
Yeah.
Right? It's the BioShock thing all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an important thing in narrative-based stories that are essentially telling you, do this, do this, do this to proceed. I don't know how they could have finagled it to have the characters wrestle with that, because it essentially they would have needed an info dump at the very end. Because I don't think NieR ever realized what he was truly doing, at least not in the events that we see. Yona certainly doesn't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Vice, unclear. It's unclear where he even went at the end.
It's really unclear what Vice actually knows through the entire game. Like you never really get a sense of what he actually knows. So
I'm just not sure how they'd get them all onto the same page to have them wrestle with it without making like ending F and like a whole new DLC.
Right. And I don't know, you can cut this if you feel like this is going too far into a spoiler for a different game, but in NieR Automata, they do have to deal with it. And it's, I feel like it's just a bit more interesting that me and the other characters we're all dealing with what's going on. But I do agree that this is a cool thing that is uniquely video game. Video games can do this in a way that like a movie, like I'm not complicit in what a movie character does, but I am the one swinging the sword in the video game, And
I think Yoko Taro and his team wanted to capitalize on that idea because that's exactly what the whole playthrough B is.
Yeah.
You're still going around killing these shades. You have to proceed, but now what you're doing. You're killing children. You're killing regular people. And I think they wanted you to sort of sit in that and to stew in it and to ask yourself, is it always the right move to just kill stuff in video games?
It's interesting too, because when you start the game over, you start with kind of a new goal. Like you kind of start with this implied new goal that you're actually going to be able to get a better ending this time. If you go and do it all again, and then again, if you're following the advice to collect all the weapons and stuff, you're doing that for the purpose of getting the final ending. And so all of this is like, I know that what I'm doing is wrong and evil, but I'm going to get the good ending by doing this, right? Like, did you have that feeling? Because I sure as hell did.
I don't think I thought about it at the time. It makes all the sense in the world. At the time, well, for C and D at the time, I was just focused on getting the weapons because that's a pretty annoying task.
Yeah.
Through playthrough B, I wasn't really thinking about getting a better ending. I was just I was focused on experiencing everything that I'd done before, sort of like as a repentance, like experiencing all of the harm that I've done before, now hearing the other side telling me what I'm doing, even though in the game I can't hear it. So no, at the time I wasn't thinking that, but it makes sense. I can understand why your mind went there.
Yeah, that was definitely where my mind was. I was definitely thinking like, okay, I now know that what I'm doing is evil, but now we're on that, like I think you said at the beginning of the first episode, like how far are you willing to go when you feel like you're doing the right thing? And the new goal is a better ending, because I was not satisfied with the first ending. I don't think you're supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And that's the thing too, is like now you're going through playthrough B, NieR himself still believes he's doing the right thing, but there is that narrative irony where we as God, I hope that's the right one. There's like 3 of them.
There's too many.
We as the player know that NieR is not doing the right thing. So now we're living in this theme of perspective. We have a different perspective from NieR, and we get to see him being a monster, pretending he's doing the right, or thinking he's doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this goes back to, the September 11th attacks that Tara was so inspired by. It's like one side thought that they were doing something good and just for their cause, whereas I could say we as Americans, viewed it as something completely different. And that's kind of what Tara was forcing us to do here. It's a forced perspective, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it, man. I don't know. I don't think it's perfect, and I don't think it would be I don't know that it would be possible to execute this perfectly. And then, of course, what does perfect even mean? But I think it's really well done. I think it's heavy-handed, especially in routes C and D, especially with certain characters like Gideon. It's heavy-handed. It's very heavy-handed. But as a whole, I think it works really well.
Yeah, especially Route B. This is a messy idea to have you replay the game a minimum of 3 times to get to see all, not like in a gamer collector way to get all the endings or something, to literally just see the whole story, to play the game minimum 3 times. And if you're not following a guide, probably more than 3 times, because God help you if you're not following how to get all the weapons.
Do they tell you to get all the weapons for ending C and D though?
It's I don't think so. No.
I don't remember.
It's and I can't remember if you need all the weapons for C and D or if it's for E. It's for C and D, right? Because it's in the original game. It's
for C and D, and then ending E, you need at least D, I believe.
Okay.
You don't need C,
yeah,
but you do need D.
So there's one other scene just from Route B that is not shade humanizing centered, and it's Emil's backstory about him petrifying his sister. And anytime we already know what happens to Emil, we already knew that his story was tragic, and now they're just like, hey, do you want more tragic scenes from Emil's backstory? And I was like, kind of, but not really, but yeah, let's see him.
We also, at the end of Route B, get a new ending scene. Emil survived his blast.
Yeah.
Like it or not, he is alive. He's just ahead, though.
Yeah.
And there's a supposedly a very funny story, like an anecdote in Grimoire NieR about Emil, like kind of making his way through the world is just ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Can't read it unless you read Japanese, but it's there supposedly.
Yeah.
What I want to do now, just for the sake of time, is just really lightly go through ending C and D, route C and D, because they are largely the same.
Yeah.
But there are some differences. So C and D, to get these endings, you have to have every weapon, every single one. My experience was starting route C, I didn't need to do a ton of extra side quests. I did some here and there through A and B, as long as you know the right ones to do. You're not going to need to grind for hours and hours, although there are RNG elements on certain weapons, which is fucking dumb. So it can take you an hour or more to get one weapon because you have to get rare drops from where else? The junk heap.
The junk heap. Yep. It's about this time when I'm going through route, trying to get the ending for C and D, where I start in my head. I start to be like, I know the sequence of events here. I go to the junk heap and I go kill the robot, and then I can go to the forest and do that. But you don't. You go to the junk heap, you get the weapon part, then you have to wait, and then you go to the forest, then you go to the junk heap again, and then you go do that, and then guess what? You got to grind for weapons, grind for materials. So you go to the junk heap again, and it's a real fucking pain in the ass. And like, I can sit back now that I'm done playing the game and appreciate the point that Yoko Taro is driving home, but I cannot lie here and say that I enjoyed this in the slightest. I was not having fun playing it during this part.
It's hard to blame you. I mean, I completely understand. I think I've said this before. I'm willing to put up with a lot of friction if I'm invested in a story. I'm a story first gamer in a lot of ways, except when it comes to like Rocket League and Smash, and most notably new now Marvel Snap. But yeah, I am willing to put up with a lot of that friction, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
I don't mean to breeze through these, but I want to get to ending E just for the sake of time.
Mm-hmm.
Ending C and D, you get some new stuff. You get intermittent scenes with Devil and Popola sort of talking at the church.
Mm-hmm.
Just they know what's going on. You get to see that. You get some more context with Emil and Halua's backstory.
You see Emil's birthday, which actually made me cry. The scene where Emil's having a birthday party and they bring him the same cookie he gets every day, but it's brought by his favorite nurse, and he's so happy. And just like that.
Oh my God, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, combined with everything else that you've seen about Emil's story, just like instant, like made me cry. It was brutal.
Poor baby.
Yeah.
I did not remember that. Jeez, it's been a minute since I played through this. Moving forward, there is some new context with the Louise fight on the beach. It just sort of highlights the relationship that she had with the postman. It wasn't weird. It was really just a shade looking for human connection. Nothing weird.
Mm-hmm.
At the end,
real quick though,
before
the
the
end,
sorry.
Devil and Popola's scenes give you the context that they are kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes. They're trying to set up the reunion. There's a couple of scenes where they're worried about your well-being, but not because you might die, because they're worried about you as people, but they're worried about their mission. There's a scene where they know about the shade in the Louise in the shipwreck, and they're trying to use it to help their mission. So it's just a little bit of them scheming is what you get.
Right.
Yeah.
Did I not say that?
I don't think so, but my internet also went out. So.
Oh, Zencaster.
Yep. Anyway,
that is completely correct. They're scheming. They be creeping. They're going to find you. And I don't remember the next lyric from Redbone. NieR and Yona, when they're reunited at the very end, the death of the Shadow Lord this time causes almost an immediate relapse in Tyrion. This is where he goes through a bit of a change of heart, which I think is weak. But the gist of this ending is, for C&D, we've got to fight Shade Kaine, and Tyrion tells us that at some point he's going to hold her down. And you have two choices. You can either kill her, which is what she wants, or she asks you to do this before, she fully turns.
Yeah.
Or you can sacrifice yourself for her. She will become a regular human again. You will cease to be.
Mm-hmm.
The ending where you kill her, Tyrion kind of comes back just like Vice did, and he's like, I was with her a long time. She had so much pain. This is genuinely what she wanted. Like, you did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, interestingly though, that's not canon. The canon ending is D, where you spare her, because classic NieR, he's always got blinders on. What you do is it's not clear how this works. I think you just have to say, okay, I accept this.
I'm playing a video game. This is fantasy.
Yeah, this is fantasy, exactly. Midichlorians, am I right?
Yes.
But you sacrifice yourself for her, and she wakes up. This also erases all of your data, by the way. It's the Yoko Taro classic trick. It shows every single bit of your data getting deleted.
Yeah, all your menus, all that stuff. I'm not emotionally attached to my menus. I don't give a shit. No,
I was staring at it while it was going on. Like, I'm not the audience for this.
Yeah.
But when Kaine wakes up, Yona recognizes her, and Yona's like, "You saved me, right? Like, it was you. Like, thank you so much." And Kaine recognizes Yona, obviously, but she doesn't remember. Nobody remembers NieR. Like, it's as if he never existed. But the important thing is that Kaine feels this persistent and deep sadness, and she's crying. She just doesn't know why. And this directly leads into Route E.
Right. Real quick, though, with those endings, because at the beginning of the first episode, and I used the term manufactured tedium, and you said you wanted to revisit that. This is where we revisit this.
I'm shocked that you remembered that far back.
Well, keep in mind...
For those listening, we recorded episode 1 like a month ago.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, I also recorded my own podcast episode about this game, so I've had a lot of thoughts going on about NieR in the last couple months. So the fact that you went through all the bullshit to get those weapons added 5 to 10 hours onto my playtime of not fun video gaming, to go and get all the weapons, to do all these just horrendous side quests, in my opinion. Because in my head, as a video game player, I think that there's a better ending at the end of this, right? I'm doing this for a reason. And the fact that you get to this ending, and both of these endings that you get suck for, like, they're good story, but they suck for you as the player. One of them, you kill Kaine. I don't want to kill Kaine. She's my buddy. The other one, you erase yourself, and then you leave Kaine with this irreparable sadness, which also sucks. So both of these endings are super depressing, and the fact that you went through so much to get these bad endings is awesome, and I love it.
Okay, you really had me in the first like 3/4 of that,
right? It's something that, like, especially now, because I beat the game like a month and a half ago, I can look back on it and not be frustrated at grinding for parts in the fucking junk heap, but I can think about how all of this and the persistent idea that I was gonna have a happy ending, and then you get to these, neither of these are happy endings. Both of them are terrible. Arguably killing Kaine is the happy ending, right? Because she wanted to die. She said it herself.
And it's not even canon, technically.
So, and I'm going to revisit this thought when we get to ending E. I'm going to put a bow on this in ending E. But I love how Yoko Taro set this up, where it's like you're going to do all this shit to get the good ending, and guess what? There is no good ending. The story's fucked. It's always been fucked.
100%, man. And that's my favorite kind of story. Like, I've said this before, the happy ending very rarely touches me in a way that makes me say thank you for that. Jesus Christ.
You're writing a letter to Yoko Taro saying thank you for this too.
Thank you for touching me, Mr. Taro.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, after a certain, I don't want to say age, because that makes me sound pompous, but after a while, like, the happy ending where everybody gets what they want, it doesn't do anything for me anymore. Right? Like, I love these kind of endings that have consequences and have weight.
Yeah.
It's not just the hero winning. It's, people like, there's a phenomenal quote that I read recently from K.A. Applegate, who was the author of the Animorphs. And I found this quote originally through a Jacob Geller video. I don't need to shout him out, but please check him out if you haven't.
Mm-hmm.
But like, people were upset at the end of Animorphs because like there wasn't a grand, huge finale. And she wrote this big response. The gist of it was like, war doesn't have a happy ending ever, and like it doesn't wrap up that way. That's just not real.
Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate about these kinds of stories is there are consequences. Nobody is going to be completely happy in the end. Like that's just life. I mean, this Disco Elysium, Lisa the Painful, BioShock to a certain extent. They're the best kinds of stories for me, and it's not surprising that they hold up. So NieR Automata. I mean, geez Louise, talk about a sad story.
Yeah.
It's great, man. It's great. And I'm glad that you liked it because as you were explaining it, I was like, oh, geez, he's going to say how much he hated it.
No, I was taking you through the journey of how I felt grinding for the fucking weapons. And then, because it like, if I want people to be perfectly clear, like I spent about 15 hours of this game being like, I don't want to play this. I want to play something else. But I want to see how the story ends, so I'm going to keep playing it. But I don't want to. And when I said manufactured tedium for a purpose way at the beginning of the first episode, this was the purpose, was to make you feel like there was a purpose to what you were doing when there's not. There's no happy ending. And like, this world is horrible. Why would there be a happy ending in this world?
I remember when you brought that up, I said, so I wasn't sure what you meant by it. Mm-hmm. At the time, what I thought you were going to say was grinding for the weapons sucks and it took away from the experience. Now that you've explained what you meant, I completely agree, 100%. We are on the same grimoire, my friend.
Hell yeah.
I completely agree. Now we've got ending E. This is unique in game form to NieR Replicant, the remake. This is an adaptation from Grimoire NieR, of course. They changed it a little bit to go into Automata more smoothly. And even then, it's still kind of vague. So here's what happens. Identical playthrough as playthrough A up until you save Kaine at the Aerie. You know, it's when she gets knocked out by Hook, and you have to kind of pull her out of her unconsciousness, you know? But when you reach in to grab her hand, your hand kind of turns digital, and then it disappears. And Kaine wakes up, she's crying, she's still feeling the sadness from ending D. She kind of explains that, like, again, like in a little, like, previously on sort of thing.
She also says something to the effect of, like, people kept thanking her for saving Yona, and she was like, I don't remember any of this. I don't think I saved her.
Yeah. So this is all the ramifications of NieR sacrificing himself for her.
Yeah.
This is also most notably where you finally get to play as Kaine,
Yes.
which should have happened in playthrough B.
Yes, it should have.
I'm going to say here, she's so much fun to play as.
Yeah. She's not that different, but she is different enough, and you have spent so long doing the same 2 magic spells and the same 5-hit combo. Really wanted this.
You know what it is? She's Platinum Games. That's what it is.
Kinda, yeah.
Well, I mean more so than NieR.
Yeah, because this is new. So this is It's it's welcome. Like, as much as I say it's not that different, it's welcome for sure.
100%. I love playing as Kaine. As Kaine, you are kind of taking care of the village. You're taking care of Yona, presumably. And somebody tells you as you're killing shades, like you literally stand up and say, might as well kill some shades. And as you're doing that, somebody says like, hey, yeah, like I'm on my way to the Forest of Myth. Like we can't get a hold of them. And Kaine's like, you won't last 2 seconds out there. Let me go instead. And he's like, hey, be my guest, pal. When you get there, though, everybody is dead. And there is a weird portal in the Sleeping Beauty tree. And out of it, machines are coming. Mm-hmm. These look similar to the machines in the Junk Heap. Similar. And we're able to go into the tree for the first time, and this is where we learn for ourselves, definitively, that this tree is actually a massive supercomputer / facility. And this is the wild part. When you get inside, 2 voices, a boy and a girl, are talking to Kaine. they're just explaining the story, how she's a replicant. She killed the original Gestalt, which isn't true. I mean, NieR did, but semantics, it's part of the whole thing. Every timeline is canon in Yoko Taro. So every time I've said it's not canon, write me a hate email. But they're basically just saying, like, you fucked up. You messed up by doing this. You doomed humanity. And when they show themselves to us, they kind of materialize out of wires. It's kind of like they're part of the tree. They look identical to 2B and 9S from NieR Automata.
No shit.
They look younger.
I did not notice that.
Yeah. In the Japanese version, it's the same exact voice actors too. I don't know if it's the same as English. If it was the same, then they did a hell of a job changing their voices to sound younger. But I know for the Japanese 2B and 9S, it's the same. They call themselves the administrators of this facility, and you are going through the core just fighting machines and clones of yourself, seemingly just for their amusement. Like, they're telling you about how they're monitoring things and how, replicants are this, you're not strong enough to fight this. This is interesting that you got this far. It seems like it's just for their amusement. And we're not going to make this a 3-hour episode, but there's a lot of ambiguity here that I haven't parsed my way through yet. Still not sure.
Yeah, I played this, I played this section, did not know what the fuck was going on until basically the end.
Speaking of not knowing what's going on, as we're fighting several clones of ourselves that the administrators are just toying us with, Emil comes out of nowhere. He's got 4 arms.
Hell yeah. Congrats, Emil.
And he turns around, he blasts the clones out of the way, and he helps Kaine up, and she kind of looks at them and then accepts the hand up. And later on, she's like, why the hell do you have 4 arms? And he's like, it's a long story. We don't have time.
I want DLC or a side story. Just give me a little 5-hour game of Emil getting some extra arms.
How about a 5-year game of learning Japanese so you could read the story that this came from? Because I don't know.
That's a good point. I'll go check YouTube instead.
Yeah. Sayonara konnichiwa. That's all you need to know, right? It's a joke, all right? And learning.
So you fight these clone versions of yourself. The children, the robot children, the wire children, they're talking to you this whole time. I'm glad you have notes here about what's going on, because I didn't even really try to explain it on my show, because I don't know what any of this means.
It's so ambiguous, and that's why when I had heard at first that this connects it to Automata, I thought that it was. Turns out, and this is through the help of some helpful people on Reddit, I'm just going to read some of this just real quick. There are actually thousands of years of events between this ending and Automata, including Project Gestalt fails, aliens invade Earth, the army of humanity, composed of androids, fights the aliens. The aliens create machine life forms to fight Emil and the aliens. Emil clones himself, by the way. There's a machine network. There's so much that was half of it. That was half of this comment. There's so much that happens that this is not a direct link. This is more of it's gently nudging us to make the connections, if we can't read Grimoire NieR, into seeing how these two worlds are connected, rather than just saying, oh, it's thousands of years in the future.
Right. Yep. But so I kind of had a feeling that this was related to Automata somehow. But then when you go into the digital world, that was when I was like, oh, this is, okay, same world, because I played this before,
So where were we here? We're going through this tree, this facility, and the whole time the administrators are explaining that this is all made up of our memories specifically. And I said through the tree. I meant through the tree, and then also through the digitized world bit. They're quick to point out too that they are our memories, but the shades that we're fighting are actually people, like innocent people that we cut down.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of fuck with us a little bit, to use Kaine's words, by at a certain point they swap out the baby shades, like the regular just grunts, for people.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear the villagers from the area saying, like, you're a freak, you're not one of us.
Mm-hmm.
And it is messed up, man. Like, what I still don't understand is, and maybe somebody that has a better background of the NieR lore could explain this to me, is why. Okay, so if these are predecessors to 2B and 9S, which I think if it's not confirmed, it's like got to be pretty darn close to it. Why would they be being this hostile towards Kaine? I don't understand.
That's why we kept the conversation moving when you first said that they were a lot like 2B and 9S and had the same voice actors, but I was over here tisking because I don't like that, if that's the case. It feels it feels very ham-fisted to make a reference to something that by this point, when this remake came out, if you're playing this, you probably played Automata, because way more people played Automata than the original. So this feels like ham-fisted fan service to me.
I'm glad that you said that, because I felt the same way. This is adapted from a story that was in Grimoire NieR, which was written before Automata came out, I think. But it's not, like, everywhere that I checked, it noted that it was altered. So, and I don't know how they altered it.
Mm-hmm.
So this, I mean, maybe it didn't have anything to do with 2B and 9S. Why knowing what 2B and 9S know and don't know at the beginning of Automata, why would they be being so hostile to Kaine? I don't get it.
Right. Yeah, I saw these just as, twins, fucking The Shining or something, twins, magical twins that are just, I can't even explain what they are. I don't know what's happening here. I'm scared.
I mean, glory to mankind, right? It could be because they believe Kaine to be the one that doomed mankind.
Yeah.
I mean, that maybe, but even that still to me feels a bit flimsy.
That would explain why whoever they are is hostile to Kaine, and then there's a link to Yorha in Automata, but it does not give any satisfying explanation for why they might be 2B and 9S, because 2B and 9S don't know what's going on. They're grunts, basically.
Right.
So, yeah, anyway, this sequence after that with Kaine, when you're basically fighting boss fights and a bunch of shades, and Vice shows up to help out. This was I still playing this, no idea what's going on story-wise, except she's trying to recover the memory. I don't know how, but this I think effectively portrayed how difficult this is to kind of reverse this erasing.
We know that the tree, the facility, is storing memories.
Mm-hmm.
I read the purpose like in the wiki, but like the actual purpose of the facility is to store it as a failsafe, I think, or for like redistribution once the gestalts merge back into the replicants, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But all these memories are here, so it makes sense that she can recover them here. I get that. I'm still not sure why the Shining twins are involved at all.
Yeah.
I really don't get it. I don't even know, like, why is Vice there? Is he a memory?
Yeah, it's not
it's
clear.
Very unclear.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, like, you're so far in the digital weirdo world that Vice shows up. I'm like, yeah, of course. Why not? Everything else that's happening is really weird. So why not? And a reunion of sorts, because Emil came back. Now Vice comes back, and we know what we're working toward, I guess.
And work toward it we do once we defeat Hook, which is the twins describe that as our worst memory of all time before unleashing it upon us.
Makes sense.
We defeat that. They're getting wiped away, the twins are, like, as we're getting out of this place, and they're saying possible futures are blending with the time we currently inhabit. Again, no idea what that is hinting towards. because everything in this universe, I think, is canon. But once we do that, all of Kaine's memories immediately come back, and she gives this little speech.
Shut up, shut up, shut up! I already made up my mind. Nobody tells me what to do. I swore I would be a sword. I swore that I would be your sword. Do you hear me? So I am going to get you back, and I don't care what it takes. Who the fuck do you think you are to just up and disappear like that, huh? I'm the one who gets to decide what my life means to me. It's my life, and I'll do whatever I want with it. So quit wasting time like a brainless fuckwit and get your ass back here now!
It's very touching. You know, I mean, that's just all it is. It's incredibly touching. She finally remembers NieR. She remembers how much she cared for him. Like, this is all for him. Of course, she can't let him get away without telling him to, like, you know, quit fucking around, but it's very sweet. The ending scene here, and again, if you look at this face value, it's very sweet. A lunar tear blooms up from the ground. It shoots up and it blooms, and when it does bloom, Emil looks in and he sees Kaine holding a young version of NieR. Like, he is nude. He is being cradled by Kaine. This is as explicit a birth scene as you could possibly have. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all know what flowers represent. We've seen Georgia O'Keeffe. NieR is nude. He's being cradled by a motherly figure. Mm-hmm. Like, this is apparent. So you might be thinking, well, it's hope. Well, I mean, Shadowlord's gone, so humanity is still doomed. At the very minimum, I mean, you could maybe this NieR is human, but Kaine is a replicant. The shades are still out there relapsing. Everybody's still a replicant. Everybody's still going to die. Mm-hmm. So the fact that this ending is so cheery kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit. You know, like, it made me feel good when I first saw it, and then I was like, oh no.
Yeah. This is what I said. We're going to put a ribbon on top of all the bad stuff from ending C and D, right? How that's a unsatisfying bad ending. This is too. And I like this one even more because I think subconsciously we think they put a new ending into this game, and it's going to, you start playing it and you realize it's going to relate to trying to bring NieR back. And so subconsciously, I think, happy ending. It's now is the chance for the happy ending. And it's not again. And I love it again. And I love it, like, maybe not as much as C and D, but I really, really appreciate how they are committed to the fact that there is no happy ending here to be had. And so, like you said, what's done is done, but you can keep playing after this. Like, after this ending, you can run around, you can do stuff, you can do side quests, you can go kill stuff. I don't know if you can advance the story, but you can keep going. Actually,
just like video game things?
Yeah, like you can run around, and I think you can advance the story even, because you load up your file, your save data, and you're back in like root D or something like that, I think.
This ending does restore all of your previously lost data.
Yeah.
That is true.
So if I'm understanding that right, what you've actually done is just set yourself up on this cycle of unhappiness, because if you keep playing, you're just going to get to this point again. There's never going to be a happy ending. You can keep playing if you want to, but nothing there.
And at a certain point, it's like the only way to get the happy ending is to not play it.
Yeah. And I love it.
That's a big theme for an ending of another game, and I can't think of it. But one thing that I'm a little confused on still, there's a lot in ending E that I'm confused on. Like, I think I have a pretty good read on everything else, but ending E, like, I'm struggling. Mm-hmm. What does the lunar tear represent? In NieR Automata, where do we see the lunar tear? We see it with Yona. We see it as a wreath with Kaine. It represents a sort of hope, right? It represents life in a certain way. It represents hope. It represents positive emotions. And when we see it bloom out of the ground here at the end in this birth scene, that's at direct odds with the message of the game and with the reality of the game, what with Shadowlord being gone.
Mm-hmm.
What I also know, though, is that the Lunar Tier is present, I believe, in Drakengard 1, but heavily in Drakengard 3. Drakengard 3 is before all of that. It is before Automata, Replicant, Drakengard 1, as I think. It's before it all. So I'm wondering if playing through that on PS3 would help this reading at all, because I know it's an important symbol. It is highlighted at the end as a very important symbol. But hell if I can't get a read on it, because it seems to be conflicting with the ending.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the symbolism with the Lunar Tier here at the end, but I agree. Earlier in the game, it's one of the only symbols of hope, and of positive memories for Kaine and stuff like that. I don't know which quote you just cut into the episode before we got on this talk of the ending cutscene.
Weren't you listening, Dave? Didn't you hear it? Are you accusing me of editing my podcast?
I sure hope you edit your podcast, sir. But I wrote this quote down too, because this seems like the only happy thing that you can take away from the ending is the quote that even though our journey was meaningless, even if we make mistakes, even if the world ends, we journey with the people we cherish. And it's the theme of friendship and the importance of friendship. And Kaine says that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
that is the end of what I spliced in.
Okay, good. So I just said it again. You can, listeners, let Rick know whose voice acting you prefer, Kaine's or mine. So that to me was, I'm taking away the hopelessness of the situation. The characters are living on with the JRPG knowledge that through friendship, maybe not everything is possible in this game, but the fact that we have each other gives us something to live for when it's clear that everything else in the world, there is really nothing to live for anymore. But they at least have each other, which seems like we've been talking about, you've brought it up several times, one of the key things that they wanted to focus on in this story.
And that jives with the Lunar Tier as a symbol, right? It jives with Yoko Taro setting out to make friendship a key theme. I'm starting to wonder, because I firmly believe that these symbols and themes are intentional and apparent. I don't think it's a misread. I'm wondering if I'm misinterpreting the ending. And if if humanity isn't doomed, if there's more to it that I just don't know. And with Taro games, it's entirely possible. There's one story in NieR, Grimoire NieR, that tells you that no, actually humanity's not doomed. I think if we played Automata, we might have a better read on that. But
yeah, it's
I don't know, man. This ending, it's puzzled me ever since I first got it.
It might just be that the Lunar Tier has always been a symbol of hope, and at the end, it still is a symbol of hope, but not for you, the player, and not for the world, just for this group of characters. Because
that's true too.
They have this.
That's a good point.
They have this realization here that we journey with the people we cherish. That's the most important thing. So they have something to be hopeful about. Even though we as the player, we know better that there's no happy ending coming. So maybe that's it.
That's a good point. I didn't think of it that way. We talk all the time about things the player knows that the characters don't know, and vice versa. So, I mean, maybe symbols can act in that way too.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a symbol for them, as a positive symbol for them as well throughout the game. We associate it the same way because we're taking in the story as we go, but now we're in this position where we know so much more than the characters do. It still means the same thing to them.
Whew. What a game. What a game.
Yes.
I still firmly love this game. I personally like it more than Automata. The arguments pro Replicant, it's largely in the characters and the writing of the characters and the world building to a lesser extent, but It's a really special game. They both are, NieR Replicant and NieR Automata, and I think we can both say we highly recommend you play both of them. They're masterpieces.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you're at the end of this episode and you're listening and you're thinking, "Hey, maybe I should try out that NieR Automata," I highly recommend you do. And I'm not going to get into a compare and contrast between the two games, but I do agree that this game put the focus on friendship and a character group, and they pulled it off. Like, they nailed it in this game. And I think that Automata's focusing on different things, and I think it does that really, really well too. But the group of NieR and Vice and Kaine and Emil is a special video game group.
Yeah, I completely agree. They are both terrific games. Again, highly recommend you play both of them. There's something for all types of video game enjoyers in both, whether you are into the combat, the lore, the world building, the side quests, the grinding, whatever. It's all there. This is a terrific series. You can play them in whatever order, although Replicant is technically first. You don't need all of the extra lore. You don't need it. It's there if you want to explore it, but it's a very special series, and if hearing 6 hours from this show wasn't enough, you can check out both the Replicant and Automata episodes from Dave's show, which I am now going to pivot to let him talk about a little bit.
Thank you, man. Yeah. So my show's Tales from the Backlog. Again, I do video game reviews, not unlike pixelprojectradio, but I don't do the full story walkthrough on my show. My show's more focused on deep diving mechanics and systems, and we talk about story and music and stuff too. We just don't do the full story breakdown for most games. And on my show, I break it into as deep a dive as we can do with no spoilers, and then there's a spoiler wall. You can check every show's show notes for timestamps. So if you haven't played the game, you can listen to a sizable chunk of every episode and then just tap out at the spoiler wall. And then after that, we do the discussions about all the spoilers that need to be discussed. So if you're listening to this, I think you're listening because you enjoy Rick and what he does, and Ben too, of course. And Rick has been a guest on my show many times and will continue to be a guest many times. So if you want a good place to start, we talked about Yakuza Like a Dragon. We talked about 13 Sentinels. We talked about Disco Elysium. I'm probably forgetting another one. You've been on the show lots of times. So I appreciate you, man, and I appreciate you inviting me to come on and talk about NieR for 6 hours.
Thanks, man. I highly recommend Dave's show as well. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's one of the best indie podcasting shows out there. Highly recommend you check it out. I always do. Final Fantasy IX was the other one.
That's right. The most recent one, too.
Yes.
Of all the ones to forget, is the one that was literally like 3 weeks ago.
Yes. And of course, you will all hear Dave again. He's essentially a rotating permanent co-host. Permanent rotating co-host. Adjectives, you know how they work. So you'll hear him again. You could check out his podcast if you'd like. I always, whenever I go to recommend an episode, it's always on the tip of my tongue because there are so many good ones. One of the first that I ever heard, well, that's not technically true because I listened to the first episode, but Florence is a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Rocket League was the first one,
yes.
If you're interested in hearing that.
A non-traditional episode for a game that has no spoilers.
Persona 5, covered it. Metal Gear Solid, covered it. There's a lot of good stuff over there.
Mm-hmm.
You can check out those links in the show notes. You'll find a link tree or otherwise links to get you to where you need to be. As for us, you know the deal. We're on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, and Discord. You can find those links in the show notes. Please join the Discord, by the way. It is free and it is fun. Free and fun. You can do both, all in the Discord.
It's a good time.
It is a good time. It's a lot of fun. You can also join the Patreon if you're so inclined. That's patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. There are a handful of folks that are nice enough to give us a couple bucks a month so we can keep doing what we're doing. And as a thank you, those folks get special benefits like early schedules, voting privileges, which, by the way, we've got a lot of shows coming up in the future of patron that are patron decided. So stay tuned, including a topic from Dave. And I don't think he knows that yet, but stay tuned for that. And, you know, you get bonus episodes too, which is the fun part. So you can do all that, patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. You can also leave a rating and review for the show. We will see those on Spotify, but we can't read them because there's no reviews. And Apple Podcast and Podcast Addict. I will read every single one that gets put in, assuming it is not an obvious troll. We would prefer 5 stars, but of course, you know, do what your heart tells you. And it helps us too. I think that helps visibility. I think that's how that works. I don't know, man. 2 years and I don't know how it works still.
Reviews are good. No reviews are not good. You want to help Rick be good, don't you? Leave a review. And join the Patreon. The Patreon's a good time. You get to listen to Rick talk about Tokyo Jungle.
That's true. That is true. And I think in that episode particular, this has been bugging me ever since I released it. I worded something in a way that made it sound like I didn't know that Shibuya was a part of Tokyo. I want to be clear. I do know that that's a part of Tokyo. But the way I said it, I don't know. Maybe I was just off that day. But doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You could join the Patreon. It's fine. You don't have to listen to that one. You can listen to more. More come out all the time. It's a lot of fun. That's all the plugging for me for this time. Check out Dave's show in the show notes. Check out our socials and etc. in the show notes as well. This has been an incredible series to go down. This is one of my favorite games, and I couldn't have had a better guest. So once again, Dave, thank you for joining, and listeners, thank you for listening. For the time being, you know me. I'm Rick Firestone. We're going to be signing off for today. We'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by.